Made by Shredder Fanfiction. Like, subscribe and hype video.
The MC is reborn as Toothless's brother. The Night Fury is an exceptionally rare, highly intelligent strike-class dragon from How to Train Your Dragon, characterized by its black scales, feline-like appearance, and intense speed. Toothless is the deuteragonist of DreamWorks' How to Train Your Dragon franchise. Dragon classes. Dragons are classified into categories: Stoker, Boulder, Fear, or Tracker in some iterations, Sharp, Tidal, Mystery, and Strike.
HTTYD, What If I Was Toothless Brother? Chapter 1, The Last Flight. Told in first person, Shredder's POV. Friday nights always felt like pressing the pause button on life. The city would glow in that lazy, ember kind of way, the sky bleeding into a smoky violet while headlights flickered like stars beneath it. That soft hum of movement, laughter, and smell of street food and warm pavement, it just felt good. Like maybe, for once, everything would be okay. I stood in front of Crestview Theater, arms crossed, hoodie sleeves shoved up to my elbows, trying to play it cool while silently vibrating with excitement. "This is so unnecessary," Marcus muttered beside me, eyeing the poster. "It's How to Train Your Dragon 3, dude. We've all seen it." I scoffed and gave him a sideways glare. "First of all, it's the remastered edition, thank you very much. Dolby Atmosphere 4K. Fully restored. Toothless deserves nothing less." He snorted. "Toothless isn't real." I narrowed my eyes. "You're not real." "Children," Chloe said behind us, brushing past and heading toward the ticket booth. "Let's settle this inside." "I'm freezing." I watched her go, then glanced back at Marcus. "You guys don't get it. This one's not just animation and dragons. It's about love, loss, growing up. Finding your own path." Marcus raised a brow. "You practicing your film student monologue again?" I didn't even answer. Just pulled my hoodie tighter and followed Chloe into the lobby. The theater hadn't changed in years, still smelled like hot butter and old velvet. The walls were the same dull red with brass trim, and the carpet still had those swirly patterns like someone had let a toddler go wild with a crayon. "Middle row," I said automatically, leading the way. "Let me guess, best sound quality," Chloe teased, following me. "Exactly. Dead center. Right where the magic hits you in the chest." I grinned and claimed our seats like I was planting a flag on sacred land. "Now we wait." She sat next to me, wrapping her arms around herself and kicking her boots up on the seat in front of her. "You know, you're weirdly romantic about this stuff." "It's not weird," I said, eyes fixed on the screen as the lights dimmed. "Stories are how we make sense of the world. You think Toothless is just a dragon? Nah. He's a metaphor. Freedom. Loyalty. Love." Chloe leaned her head to the side, studying me for a beat longer than normal. "You've got a lot going on under that hoodie, don't you?" I laughed. "You say that like you're surprised." Then the previews started, and my brain shut off. The booming bass rattled the seats. My heart thumped with anticipation. There it was, the DreamWorks logo, that soft, haunting score, the voiceover from Hiccup pulling me back into that world like no time had passed at all. I lost myself in it. For 30 minutes, I wasn't Nolan. I wasn't Shredder from the skate park or the guy who never finished his college apps. I was up there soaring through the clouds, flying beside Toothless, chasing light. Then something twisted. At first, I thought it was the soda. Too much sugar too fast. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't catch a full breath. I tried shifting in my seat, adjusting how I was sitting. It didn't help. The pain spread sharp and sudden, cutting through my ribs like fire. My hands trembled. "Breathe," I muttered to myself. "Kman." Chloe leaned in, whispering, "You okay?" I tried nodding, but everything felt wrong. Like the theater had tilted, like I was floating but in the worst way. My vision blurred. My heart was hammering way too fast, or was it slowing down? I couldn't tell anymore. I don't know, I managed, barely a whisper. That's when the real fear kicked in. Because this wasn't nerves or low blood sugar. This was my body waving a white flag. Something inside me was giving out, and I couldn't stop it. Shred. Chloe's voice was sharper now. Concerned. I wanted to tell her I was fine. That it would pass. That we'd finish the movie and grab milkshakes like always. But my mouth wouldn't work. I couldn't move. My limbs went heavy, and my chest, God, it hurt. People around us started murmuring. Marcus said my name. Chloe's hand gripped mine tight. Then someone shouted, "Call 911." But the world was already dimming. The dragon's wings on the screen beat slower and slower, like my heartbeat was sinking to it. My last thought before everything faded wasn't about fear. It was regret. I never got to see how it ended. Chapter 2, Echoes of Firelight. First person, Shredder's POV. Dark. Not just night dark, but nothing dark. Like being swallowed by the bottom of the ocean, no stars, no air, no sound. Only this crushing stillness and cold crawling up my spine. I tried to move. Something was wrong. Everything was heavy. My limbs didn't respond the way they were supposed to. They felt longer, denser. Wrong. My fingers, no, claws, scraped against stone with a sound like bones dragging across concrete. Where am I? My mind spun, grasping at the last moments I could remember. The movie. Toothless flying. The music. That feeling like my heart would burst from my chest. Chloe's voice. The pain. My heart had stopped. Then darkness. And now, this. I tried to open my eyes. Nothing. Tried again, harder this time, and saw a sliver of something. A glint. A glimmer. A crack of faint light tracing jaggedly along the wall in front of me. My breath hitched. I reached out, pressing against it with unsteady claws. It didn't feel like skin touching stone. It felt like something primal, something deeper. My muscles moved differently. My shoulders rolled strangely. My back twitched, like there was more of me than before. What the hell happened to me? I shoved the wall again, and it cracked, spider web lines of soft blue light spreading like lightning veins across its surface. Pressure coiled behind my ribs like steam in a pipe. One more push. A snarl, feral and unfamiliar, rose in my throat, and I drove my weight into it. The wall shattered. Light exploded into the small chamber, blinding at first, but warm. Real. I stumbled out into a larger cave, the sudden space disorienting. My claws clicked against the stone floor as I moved forward, wings. Dragging behind me. I froze. Wings. I twisted awkwardly, trying to see myself. My body wasn't mine. No. Not human. Black, sleek scales covered every inch of me. My limbs were long, muscular, my tail swaying behind me like it had a mind of its own. My reflection shimmered faintly in a pool of crystal water near the wall, just enough to catch a glimpse. I looked like... No. Toothless. No. Not exactly. But close. So damn close. The ears, the snout, the wings, the tail. But I wasn't him. I wasn't a copy. I was me. I'm Shredder. I don't know how I knew it so clearly, but I did. My name hadn't changed. My mind was still mine. My memories, scattered as they were, still mine. Even if my body had become something else entirely. Even if I couldn't speak, I could think. I was still in here. Still alive. Still me. A sound. Soft. Behind me. I turned fast, maybe too fast, my wings flaring out as I dropped low to the stone. Instinct. Pure instinct. My eyes locked on a shape near the wall. Large. Round. Breathing. An egg. Black and violet, its shell pulsing faintly like something glowing inside. Light flickered along the cracks, and something inside was moving. Alive. I took a slow step forward. My claws scraped softly against the stone. Another step. Then I stopped and watched. The egg shifted. Crack. A small sound. Then another. A snout poked through the shell, trembling. Then tiny claws. Wings. The shell split, and the creature inside tumbled out with a squeaky little cry. My breath caught. It was small. Barely the size of my head. Its scales shimmered jet black, still wet from the inside of the egg. Its big green eyes blinked open, confused and afraid. It looked like... No. It really looked like Toothless. Not just similar like family. Like something born from the same magic. It whined again, pulling its wings in tight, curling against the stone. It was afraid. Alone. My chest ached. I knew that feeling. That same cold panic. That same emptiness. I didn't even think, I just moved. I stepped closer, slowly, cautiously, lowering myself beside it. The hatchling flinched at first, but when I wrapped my wings around it, something changed. It stilled. Trembled once. Then pressed its tiny body into mine and let out a soft, almost contented sigh. I could feel its heartbeat. Fast. Alive. It curled against me like I was home. I stayed there, holding it, cradling it in my wings. The cave quieted again. The hatchling breathed slow. Deeper. Asleep. And me? I couldn't stop staring at it. So small. So fragile. So familiar. I didn't know how I got here. I didn't know what I was, or what came next. But in that moment, nothing else mattered. Just this creature. Just this impossible connection. Just this strange new life. I closed my eyes. And the last thought I had before sleep claimed me was simple. It looks just like him. Chapter 3, Wings of Blood and Bond. First person, Shredder's POV. The wind felt different up here. Cooler. Thinner. Carried with it the salt of the sea and the taste of freedom I never thought I'd earn. I banked left, riding the updraft, muscles rippling as my wings stretched wide to catch it. The sky split open before me, streaks of cloud trailing past like brush strokes. Far below, the ocean churned, dark and endless, a glittering skin over a world I used to know, one I didn't belong to anymore. Not since I woke up in that cave. Not since the first time I saw him. It had been 5 years. 5 long, chaotic, painful, beautiful years. I remember it so clearly, even now waking up again after that first sleep, the hatchling still curled up against me, his breathing soft and warm beneath my wing. The confusion still gnawed at me, the fear of not knowing what I had become. But the moment I saw him, his tiny form trembling in the cold, I knew what I had to be. His protector. I hadn't known his name then. Didn't even know he was my brother. But instincts ran deeper than words. I couldn't talk, not like I used to. No voice. Just thoughts. Feelings. Motion. Everything became instinct. And somehow, Even without language, I understood the truth as it unraveled around me like a long-forgotten story. We were night furies. The last of them. And he Toothless, he was my little brother. I didn't know how I knew, but I knew. I'd felt it in my blood, in the way he looked at me like I was all he had. Later, when I found the remains of our den, and the bones, when I saw the markings scorched into the cave walls, I understood what had happened. Our parents were gone. Slain. Hunters, maybe. Dragons don't keep records. But the blackened stone, the claw marks, the traces of fire and ash, it told enough. I didn't need a history book to recognize the grief in my bones. Their loss had shaped me before I even knew their names. Toothless never knew them. Not really. He was still in the egg when it happened. All he's ever had, is me. And so, I became everything he needed. Brother. Guardian. Mentor. Pack. Family. I trained him myself. Day after day, flight after flight. Taught him how to control his wings. How to time his bursts. How to hide in shadows, glide on wind, dive through cloud cover, track prey by scent. He was a quick learner. Stubborn, sure but smart. Playful. Brave. Curious. Sometimes too curious. He always asked questions not with words, but through looks, gestures, the nudge of his head, the twitch of his tail. Why did the moon look cracked? Why did the water pull back before a wave? Why did my eyes always seem older than his? I never had answers. But I stayed close. And today, as we soared over the ocean with nothing but sky above and sea below, I felt it again, that low hum in my chest, quiet but constant. Pride. Toothless flew just ahead of me, glancing back every so often to make sure I was there. He always did that. Still worried, even now, that I'd vanish if he blinked too long. I gave a soft snort and pushed forward with a flap of my wings, catching up, then playfully nipped at his tail. He squeaked startled, then twirled in midair and dove toward the waves, spiraling down with a burst of speed. Show off. I followed. The wind screamed in my ears as I tucked my wings, slicing through air like a spear, catching the thermals off his wake. The sea rushed up to meet us, and at the last second, we both pulled up, skimming the surface so close that our wingtips kissed the water and left trails of white foam in our wake. Toothless barked a challenge. I flicked my tail in return and surged ahead, racing him across the endless blue. He laughed, not in words, but in the wild, reckless way he spun through the air, loops and spirals and dives like a dance. He lived in this world like he was born for it. And maybe he was. Maybe I was too. I didn't know what the future held. We were still alone, as far as I could tell. No other night furies had appeared, no hidden sanctuary, no lost tribes. Just two shadows across the sea. But we weren't just survivors anymore. We were a pack. And that meant something. I watched him glide beside me, his eyes bright, full of joy. His wings were strong now. Graceful. He was becoming something more every day. Not just a hatchling. Not just my brother. A future. I glanced toward the horizon. A storm brewed far in the distance, clouds curling black with hunger, lightning flickering deep inside the belly of the sky. We'd need to find shelter soon. A cliff cove maybe, or one of the old islands with hollowed-out volcanoes. But for now. Now we flew. Two shadows racing the wind. And Shredder was no longer lost. I was the storm's edge. I was a night fury. I was home. Chapter 4, The Sky is Ours. First person, Shredder's POV. We landed at the edge of the world. Or that's what it looked like, cliffside high above the ocean, sharp rocks and crashing waves below, the endless blue stretching out to the horizon where sea-kissed sky. Wind howled here, clean and fierce, pulling at my wings, whispering through the jagged trees behind us. This place wasn't just a resting point. It was ours. Toothless skidded to a stop beside me, tail flicking with energy. He shook himself off, stretching his wings dramatically like a show-off on stage. I rolled my eyes but couldn't help the faint rumble of amusement that passed through my chest. He was full of it today. He padded closer to the edge, peered out over the sea, then glanced back at me with that look. That look. The same one he used when he wanted to do something stupid, fun, dangerous, or usually all three. His eyes glimmered with mischief, and before I could react, he turned to the sky and let loose a crackling, electric burst of plasma. It rocketed upward like a purple comet, hissing as it split the air and then exploded in a flash of blue fire high above. I didn't need a translator. Race? I huffed softly, rising to my feet, stretching my wings slowly, deliberately. I walked to the edge beside him, casting a long shadow down the cliff face, and turned to the sky myself. Fine. I opened my jaws and fired. My plasma shot spiraled through the air to meet his, matching the explosion with one of my own. His pupils dilated with excitement. But I wasn't done. A few feet away, a gnarled old tree stood near the cliff's edge, blackened by salt and bent with age. I turned, narrowed my eyes, and launched another plasma bolt straight at it. The bolt struck the base, exploding in a pulse of blue fire. The moment the flames hit the bark, I moved. And so did he. The race had begun. Toothless burst from the cliff with a howl of wind, launching himself skyward in a tight spiral. I followed close behind, wings tearing through the air with raw power. We climbed higher, higher, the clouds splitting around us like smoke as we pushed into the open sky. I felt the pull of gravity begging me to fall. I refused. Toothless veered right, his silhouette slicing through a sunbeam. He was fast. Faster than last week. He'd grown leaner, more agile. But so had I. We dove into a valley of clouds, the moisture slicking over our scales. He disappeared for a moment, then reappeared beneath me, upside down, grinning with his eyes as he spun past in a barrel roll. Show off. I tucked my wings and dove, the wind screaming in my ears, the sea rushing up in a blur. Toothless followed, matching me turn for turn as we dropped like arrows toward the crashing surf below. I leveled out just before impact, my wingtip skimming the water's surface, sending up a spray of salt. He surged beside me, flapping hard to pass, but I banked left into a rising air current, using the wind to slingshot upward through a narrow canyon cut between two coastal cliffs. He chased. The air narrowed, the stone walls close, the light dim. This was tight flying. One wrong move and we'd clip a wing, spin out, maybe worse. But neither of us slowed. My heart pounded in rhythm with my wing beats. I felt more alive than I had in weeks. This is what we were made for. Out of the canyon, we burst back into open sky. The sea below now a blur, the sun dipping lower toward the horizon, golden light painting our wings with fire. Toothless pulled ahead. I snarled not in anger, but exhilaration, and gave everything I had. Muscles burned. My chest ached. I narrowed my body, cut the wind, pushed harder. We were flying along the cliff edge now, racing the sun. Then the trees. I remembered this part. We had to weave. The coastal forest was thick, its trees tall and gnarled, like twisted fingers clawing at the sky. We dove into them without hesitation. Left. Right. Bank. Roll. Dodge the trunks, skim the branches, arc between the moss-covered stone and the flash of green. Every turn was a guess, every breath a gamble. Toothless laughed again, his energy bursting out in a sudden spiral. He was just ahead, darting through a forked tree. I ducked lower, aiming straight for the split log at the base. It was narrower but faster. I burst through. The race narrowed now. The final stretch. We'd marked it days ago. A towering rock spire just past the last tree, the finish line. He saw it too, his wings snapped tighter as he pushed forward. I had seconds. A heartbeat. I surged. Everything in me screamed. The air was thick. The sun blinding. But I reached deep, into something deeper than muscle or memory, something primal. And I flew. The spire approached in a blur. My vision tunneled. We crossed it, first me, then Toothless just behind, his wing brushing mine. We slowed, panting, gliding low over the water as we came down onto a soft, grassy ledge. My legs buckled from the landing, not in pain, just exhaustion. Toothless flopped beside me, tongue out, chest heaving, tail flicking in disbelief. I smirked internally, of course. No words. No gloating. But I knew the truth. 3 seconds. That's all I'd won by. But a win was a win. Toothless turned his head slowly, staring at me like I'd cheated time itself. I leaned back against a stone, wings spread wide to cool down, eyes half-lidded with triumph. You'll get me next time, I thought. And somehow, I knew he heard it. He huffed and turned away, but his tail flicked once, the tip tapping my side. Affection. Rivalry. Pride. All in one. I closed my eyes, heart still pounding from the race. And somewhere deep inside, I thanked the sky. Because for the first time in 2 worlds, human and dragon, I felt free. Chapter 5, The Silence Between Breaths. First person, Shredder's POV. The wind was quiet today. Not gone, never gone, but softer, brushing along my scales like the breath of something half asleep. The sea murmured far below the cliffs, its voice a low lullaby. Even Toothless, normally bursting with energy, had gone still. He crouched beside me in the tall grass, tail low, wings tucked, his head slowly turning as he scanned the forest edge. He's learning. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. His shoulders were tense but not twitching. His breathing slow. Focused. 5 years ago he wouldn't have lasted 2 minutes in a real hunt. He'd chase bugs for fun, roar too loud, get distracted by his own tail. Now he was a shadow. Just like me. We'd been watching the herd for nearly half an hour, deer, long-legged and brown, moving carefully between trees at the edge of the clearing below. 8 of them. 1 limping slightly. 1 young and unsteady. We needed food. Not just for the energy but to train, to remember. Predators who forget how to hunt forget how to survive. And I would not forget. Not again. The memory of starvation still lived under my scales like a cold echo. The first winter after the cave, it had nearly killed both of us. I hadn't known what I was doing then. I'd never hunted like this before. I'd barely understood what I was. But I'd learned. Toothless, too. And now, we were a pack. Silent. Lethal. Alive. Toothless looked at me, waiting. I flicked my tail once, barely a whisper in the grass. Go wide. He moved without sound, gliding into the underbrush, circling right. I stayed low, creeping left, wings folded tight. Every step was placed with care. No snapping twigs. No rustling leaves. Just breath. Just focus. The deer continued grazing. I slid between ferns and rock, eyes fixed on the young one near the edge. It looked up occasionally, ears twitching, then returned to chewing. Good. Closer now. Toothless emerged on the far side of the clearing, hidden behind a fallen tree. I saw the light shift in his eyes. He was ready. I counted the beats of my heart. 1, 2, 3. I launched. Toothless did too. The clearing exploded with motion, hooves pounding, leaves flying, branches breaking. Deer scattered in every direction. I surged forward, muscles burning, teeth bared. The young one hesitated just for a moment, and that was all I needed. I lunged, wings snapping open for balance, claws forward. Toothless cut it off from the side, driving it toward me. It darted left, then stumbled. I was on it in a second. The kill was fast. Clean. Necessary. It collapsed beneath me, breath leaving its body in a single, soft gasp. I stood over it, head bowed, not in shame. Never shame. But in respect. Toothless came to my side slowly, sniffed the air, then looked up at me. We didn't speak. We couldn't. But he felt it, too. The weight. The ritual. The meaning. He didn't smile. Not this time. He leaned forward and began to eat, small careful bites. I let him have the first share. He'd earned it. Afterward, we sat beneath the trees, bellies full, the breeze picking up again, playful now like the forest was sighing in relief. Toothless yawned, rolled onto his back, wings spread out like he owned the sky. I stayed upright, watching the clearing, ears twitching. Predators or not, there was always something bigger out there. I didn't know if there were more night furies. Or if any humans would ever find us again. But here, now, in the silence after the hunt, I didn't need to know. I had Toothless. I had purpose. And I had the wind. Chapter 6, Pressure. First person, Shredder's POV. The energy burns hotter when you try to rush it. It coils too fast, like a storm gathering in the pit of your chest before your body is ready. If you're not careful, it turns on you, spitting out weak, unstable, half-hearted blasts. Or worse, exploding inside you like a kick to the ribs from the inside out. But I can't wait. I can't afford to. I stood on the ridge, wind howling through the narrow rock spines behind me. The sea was somewhere far below, its crashing muffled. I barely heard it. I barely noticed the cold air on my scales or the way the clouds hung low and grey above the mountains. All I could feel was the fire inside me. The fire I needed to master. I crouched low and opened my mouth, not to shoot but to feel. The hum of energy responded instantly, familiar and dangerous. It flooded my chest like a living thing. Normally, I let it build slowly 3 long seconds for full power, then I'd let it fly. Easy. But 3 seconds was too long. 3 seconds is the difference between surviving and bleeding. Between saving Toothless or watching him fall. So today, I wasn't practicing aim. I wasn't testing my range. I was forcing it. Compressing the time. Pushing the charge harder, faster, denser. 1 second. That was the goal. I crouched lower, jaw clenched. My chest began to heat quick. Too quick. I forced it. The energy swelled, pressure grinding against my ribs like armor plates buckling. I tried to hold it steady, contain it, but the build-up was erratic, too sharp. The blast fizzled and backfired, sparks exploded against the inside of my jaw, stinging like biting fire ants. I staggered backward, breath ragged. Too fast. No control. Try again. Toothless watched from a ledge above, lying on his belly, chin resting on his paws. He wasn't worried. He was curious. That made it worse. His eyes were calm. He didn't understand why I obsessed over this. He didn't feel what I felt in the cave. The weakness. The helplessness. I needed this. I needed to be stronger, not tomorrow. Not in a month. Now. Because someday, something stronger is going to find us. Some bigger dragon, or maybe something I can't even imagine. And if I can't strike faster and harder than anything else in the sky, then Toothless will die. And I won't let that happen. I growled, low and quiet. My body trembled as I inhaled again, opening the channel. The energy began to hum, vibrating through my limbs. I counted. 1. Forced it in. 2. Stacked the energy tighter. It swelled dangerously, lightning sparking at the corners of my mouth. My wings stiffened from the pressure. My stomach twisted. Now. I released it, not outward, but just enough to feel the release. The rock in front of me didn't explode, it shattered. The air cracked like thunder. The blast was sharp, tight, violent. The recoil slammed into my throat and chest, almost throwing me off balance. My claws scraped against the stone. But I stood. The boulder that had been my target was no longer a shape. It was rubble. Smoke curled from the remains, the center cratered like it had been punched by the gods. And for the first time today I didn't stumble. Better. I could still taste the heat. I could still feel the sting of raw power in my throat. My limbs ached, wings twitching with tension. But I was getting closer. The gap between thought and fire was shrinking. Toothless padded down the ledge, tail flicking with quiet approval. He didn't try to imitate the blast. Not yet. He sat beside me and looked at the smoking rubble, then glanced up at me. I didn't nod. I didn't growl. I just stared at the crater. Stronger. Faster. Smarter. That's what I have to be. Not for me. For him. Because I already knew. When the storm comes, I'll be the one standing between him and the fire. And I'll be ready. Chapter 7, Quiet Strength. First person, Shredder's POV. Time doesn't feel like it moves when everything is calm. Days blend together in a soft, quiet haze like warm breath against a cool morning. There's no need to measure time in seconds or sunrises anymore. Not when every day starts the same. Not when every day is easy. I stretched my wings wide, feeling the sea breeze crawl across the edge of the cliff. Our cave jutted out just enough to feel like flying even when I wasn't. The wind had a way of carrying the salt up from the ocean far below, a scent that used to put my muscles on edge. Now, it just smelled like home. This cave wasn't a cave. It was a world. A world we carved for ourselves. The ceiling arched high above, rough stone walls scarred with age. Water trickled in from a spring hidden in the back, feeding a shallow pool where the sheep liked to drink. Grass grew where the sun cut in through cracks in the wall. Not a lot, but enough. We'd raised a flock over the years. 7 sheep now. Maybe 8. They bleated lazily in their pen, a simple barrier of stones and burnt logs I'd dragged in myself. It wasn't art. It didn't have to be. It just worked. And Toothless, he made it work. I watched him from the mouth of the cave. He was out near the sheep, tail swishing like a lazy metronome. His posture was relaxed, wings half folded. Every few seconds, he would nudge one of the younger sheep back into place with a snort or a playful growl. He thought he was tough. They thought he was annoying. It made me huff, almost a laugh. He was still strong, my little brother. But I wasn't the dragon I was 5 years ago. I blinked slowly, chest rising with a deep breath. My wings felt heavier these days, not from exhaustion, but power. There was a pressure in my body now, like molten iron curled beneath my skin. When I flew, the air bent around me. When I struck, the ground split open. When I roared, even the cliffs listened. I could beat 2 Toothless now. Maybe 3. He knew it, even if he pretended not to. I didn't lord it over him. I didn't need to. Strength wasn't something I chased anymore. It was something I wore. Like a second skin. I didn't train every day now. Not like I used to. I didn't have to. I had nothing to prove. No one to fight. No predator stalking the shadows. Just the wind. Just the ocean. Just this cave and these sheep and this life. And him. Toothless let out a chirping trill as one of the sheep tried to escape the pen. He pounced a bit dramatically, nipping at its heels, then trotted back into place like he'd saved the world. His wings flared wide for balance, and he glanced toward me with a grin in his eyes. I didn't move. Didn't smile. Just watched. And inside, something soft stirred. He still looks up to me. Even now. The day moved slow. It always did. The sun lazily curved across the sky outside, and shadows shifted across the floor of our home like sleeping animals. We had everything we needed. We hunted only when we felt like flying. We slept wherever our wings took us. The sheep kept our bellies full. The cave kept the rain off our scales. And when the stars came out, I curled around him like I used to when he was smaller just because I could. Because I remember what it felt like to have nothing. To wake up in the dark, alone, confused, empty. That memory was distant now, like a dream I'd mostly forgotten. But it never left me completely. It reminded me not to take this for granted. Peace is rare. Comfort is a gift. And this is everything. I stepped back from the cliff, letting the shadows swallow me again. The stone beneath my feet was warm from the sun. I liked it that way. Toothless darted in after a few minutes, wings fluttering as he raced past the sheep and leapt into the deeper part of the cave, skidding to a stop near our sleeping pile. He flopped down in a ball of limbs and tail, chest heaving with a huff of pride. His eyes met mine for a heartbeat. Then they closed. Gone. Asleep in seconds. I followed a little slower. No need to rush. I curled beside him, wrapping a wing loosely around his smaller form. He shifted, but didn't wake. He knew I was there. He always did. The stone floor was smooth beneath me. The wind had died down outside. The sheep had settled. The cave was quiet and warm and safe. This was life now. Easy. Soft. But I stayed strong. Because someday, the world might not be so kind. And when that day came, I would be ready. But until then, I closed my eyes. And I slept. Chapter 8, The World Creeps In. POV, Shredder Toothless Hiccup. Shredder's POV. The morning was colder than usual. Not biting or cruel, just crisp. Thin clouds rolled across the sky outside the cave, soft and slow like sheep grazing the heavens. I shifted in the nest of stone and moss, uncoiling muscles that didn't want to move yet. Something was missing. No sound of sheep being harassed. No sharp chirps of triumph. No stomping paws thundering across the cave as Toothless started his chaotic morning routines. My wings stretched across nothing. I blinked once, then twice. Gone. Not surprising. I lifted my head and scanned the edge of the cave. The sheep were still asleep in their pen, one snoring softly. The wind carried no strange scents. No signs of a scuffle. No claw marks dragging out of the cave. Just Toothless being toothless. He did this often now, wandering off on his own before sunrise. I used to follow. Used to worry. But nothing had ever happened. He was cautious. Smart. He always came back. So I didn't move. Didn't panic. I just curled my tail back around myself and let my eyes drift shut again. If he wasn't back by sunset, I'd track him. But he would be. He always was. Toothless POV. My wings ached. My tail was pinned. My muzzle felt like it had been dragged through a thorn bush. This wasn't exploring. This was stupid. The net had caught me off guard. I hadn't seen it, hadn't smelled it. That's what scared me most. One moment I was following a faint scent trail through the woods, curious about the strange burn marks near the river, and the next, the ground snapped up and swallowed me in rope and metal. I'd struggled hard. My blasts had fizzled the first time. The net was too tight, wrapped under my chest, over my legs, pressing against my spine. Every time I moved, it bit deeper. I'd spent the night thrashing and panting and trying to stay quiet. The quiet part didn't last long. Now the sun was rising, and I couldn't feel my right wing anymore. My side was sore from lying on roots. And the worst part? I could hear footsteps. Two-legged ones. Close. Coming from the ridge above me. Humans. I growled softly, but even my growl sounded weak. Not fierce. Not like Shredder. He would have broken this net in a second. He would have blasted the trees and vanished into the clouds. But I was still just me. I curled my tail tighter and waited. Hiccups POV. Every step I took felt like walking into the middle of a story I didn't belong in. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. Even the birds were avoiding this place today. Maybe they knew something I didn't. Maybe they were smarter than me. But I kept going. Because I had to. Because last night, I'd set a trap, a real one, and this morning, one of the guards swore something massive had thrashed in the trees just north of the boundary. Said he heard roaring. Said it sounded like death itself was screaming. I didn't tell him I was the one who set the trap. Didn't tell him what I was hoping it caught. A night fury. The unholy offspring of lightning and death itself. The rarest dragon in the world. No one had ever seen one and lived. No one had ever killed one. But I had a net. A custom one. Reinforced with steel. Weighted. Designed not to kill but to hold. My fingers trembled on the hilt of the dagger strapped to my belt. It wasn't much. But it was sharp. And right now, it was the only thing between me and failure. If it was a night fury, and I killed it, they'd have to believe me. My father. The others. The whole village. I wouldn't just be that kid who invents stuff. I'd be a dragon slayer. I'd be a hero. My boots slid slightly on the dew-slick moss as I reached the ridge. And then I saw it. The black mass in the net below. Wings crumpled. Tail twitching. Eyes locked on mine. Not just a dragon. A night fury. I stopped breathing. The stories were true. It was smaller than I expected, but somehow more terrifying. The shadows clung to it, even in daylight. Its body pulsed with tension. It looked more like a weapon than a creature. Its gaze sliced through me. Not angry. Not afraid. Just watching. Waiting. Like it already knew how this would end. My hand hovered over the dagger. This was it. Kill it. Prove it. Do it. But my fingers wouldn't move. Chapter 9, A choice with no applause. POV, hiccup. He was looking at me. That dragon, the dragon. The night fury. The one we all thought was a myth, a ghost wrapped in shadow and fire, was looking straight at me. Not snarling. Not growling. Just watching. I couldn't breathe. The knife felt like a boulder in my hand. My fingers had gone stiff, like they didn't belong to me anymore. I stared down at it, this pathetic little thing I'd brought along, thinking somehow it would make me brave. That it would turn me into someone the others would finally respect. It didn't. It just sat there, glinting dull and useless. I looked back up. His wing twitched. He was hurting. The net was still cinched tight around one of his back legs, pulled awkwardly beneath his body. There were raw scrapes along his flanks. I don't know why I thought dragons were immune to pain. They weren't. They bled. They suffered. They looked at you with wide, blinking eyes like they were waiting to see what kind of person you were. I hated it. I hated me. I'm sorry, I whispered. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. He tilted his head. I didn't mean. I clenched my jaw. Okay, maybe I did. But I didn't understand. I thought, killing you would fix something. The wind rustled through the trees above us. It carried the scent of ash and old wood smoke. And under that, just faintly, the scent of dragon. He was still watching me. Not blinking. Not breathing heavy. Just waiting. Like he already knew what I would do. My hand dropped to the net. The rope was still tight, the knots stiff. I reached for one of the tension lines and pulled. It took a few tries. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the blade, but I sawed through the fiber until one of the bands went slack. The Night Fury flinched. I'm not going to hurt you, I said quickly. I mean I was. But not now. I swear. Another knot. Another line. I worked faster, ducking under his wing, trying to avoid the wild tension humming through his muscles. I could feel it. He was holding back, holding everything in. One bad move and I'd be nothing but a memory. But he let me. Line by line, the net came apart. Finally, the last loop unraveled, and his leg pulled free. He didn't wait. He exploded out of the trap in a blur of black and silver. I stumbled back, tripping over my own boots, but he didn't touch me. Just bolted low and fast through the underbrush. And then he was gone. I dropped to one knee and exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for days. No applause. No cheers. No one saw. Just me, in the woods, letting the rarest dragon in the world escape. And I felt relief. For the first time in forever, I did something that wasn't for anyone else. Not for Dad. Not for Gobber. Not for the tribe. Just because it felt right. I walked back slower than usual. The forest felt different now. Quieter. Like something sacred had happened and the trees were still holding their breath. As I neared the edge of the old grazing meadow, I paused. A few sheep were huddled near the fence line, bleating nervously. The pens were a little ways off, but I could see them emptying. My eyebrows drew together. I crept forward, crouching low behind a mossy boulder. Then I saw it. A shape. Black and sleek, gliding low just above the trees at the far side of the meadow. No noise. No wind. Just gone. But it wasn't the Night Fury I'd just freed. It was bigger. The wings were broader. The tail longer. And it wasn't hurt. It carried 2 sheep in its claws, dangling like plush toys. I ducked instinctively, peeking again, but it had already vanished into the clouds. My pulse thudded in my ears. That wasn't the same dragon. There was another one. A second Night Fury? No one in Burke would believe me. No one even believed there was one. If I told them there were 2, they'd think I'd hit my head on a rock. Maybe I had. I stood slowly and backed away from the cliffside. I didn't know what this meant yet. Or what I was supposed to do. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. Chapter 10, Guilt in the Valley. POV, Shredder hiccup. Shredder's POV. He wasn't back. The sun had gone down. The winds had shifted. And still, no sign of him. I stared out from the ledge at the edge of our cave, the sea yawning below in cold, moonlit silence. Every gust of wind felt like it should have carried his wing beats, his laughter, something. Anything. But there was nothing. The sheep rustled in the back of the cave. One of them bleated softly, but I ignored it. I was too tense to sleep. Too alert to rest. My wings twitched against the stone beneath me. He always came back before dark. That was the one rule he'd never broken. He might be reckless, maybe even a bit stupid sometimes, but he never worried me like this. I stepped out into the wind. The night was mine. I searched high. I searched low. I flew until my wings burned and my chest ached. I sniffed through the woods, dove through ravines, even circled near the edges of the human territory. There were signs, branches snapped, faint trails, but they were all old. Too old. Nothing recent. Nothing solid. My thoughts spiraled. What if he was hurt? What if he'd wandered into one of the human traps I always warned him about? What if I'd failed him like I failed? No. Not again. I snarled under my breath and banked hard to the left. I circled again. Checked the lake. The waterfall. The place he used to nap in the sun. Still nothing. By the time dawn kissed the sky, I was dragging myself home. Not because I wanted to, but because my body gave me no choice. I'd rest. Just a little. Then I'd go again. I curled up at the mouth of our cave, staring at the horizon through half-lidded eyes, every muscle still coiled and ready. But sleep took me anyway. Hiccups POV. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, that dragon. Caught in my net. Tangled, confused, thrashing. Bleeding. And I'd let him go. That should have made me feel better. It didn't. Because when he took off into the woods, I didn't follow. I just stood there, heart pounding, proud of myself for doing the right thing. Then I saw the tail fin. Torn. Shredded along the edge. At the time, I told myself it would heal. That he'd be fine. Dragons were strong, right? But what if I was wrong? What if he wasn't fine? I had to know. Tracking a night fury is like chasing a ghost. They leave almost nothing behind, no sound, no scent, no prints. But I remembered the direction he flew. And I remembered the shape of the terrain. I followed for hours. Through brush. Across ridges. Sliding down muddy slopes and ducking under tangled branches. Every few feet, I found some tiny clue, a bend in a branch, a stone kicked off the path. The tiniest of signs, but they were there. And they led me to a valley. A hidden one. Like something out of a dream. The cliffs rose like silent sentinels around it, and the air inside felt still. And in the center of it, by a pool of still water, there he was. The Night Fury. He was curled tight, tail half hidden under his body, chest rising and falling slow and shallow. I dropped to my knees behind a rock, barely daring to breathe. His eyes were closed. I could see it clearly now. The damage. The left tail fin torn nearly in half, the edges jagged, the membrane frayed like a snapped sail in the wind. When he tried to move, he winced. He couldn't fly. Because of me. Because of my net. I felt something twist hard in my gut. Not fear. Not excitement. Something worse. Guilt. Real, ugly, gnawing guilt. This wasn't just any dragon. This was a living, breathing creature, and I'd broken him. He shifted, trying to stretch his wing. But it was no use. His tail dragged behind him as he tried to stand. He snarled, frustrated, and smacked the ground with his paw before collapsing again, breathing heavy. I wanted to help him. But I didn't even know how. Would he attack me on sight? Or worse, would he run, even if it hurt him? I stayed behind the rock, hands curled around my knees, eyes locked on the dragon I'd hurt and released all in the same breath. The sky above was starting to warm with the first pinks of sunrise. He didn't move. He didn't even seem to know I was there. I should have walked away. I couldn't. Chapter 11, Steps in the Grass. POV, Hiccup Shredder. Hiccup's POV. The valley had become a ritual. Every day after training, I'd sneak out. Past Gobber, past the other kids, past Dad, especially Dad. I'd slip through the forest and down into the ravine, slipping between trees like a shadow, careful not to make a sound. And every day, I'd find him. The Night Fury. He always lay in the same spot, curled near the water. Still. Quiet. Watching. He knew I was there. He always knew. The first day, he growled. Bared his teeth. The second, he didn't move, just stared, ears flat. But I noticed something in his eyes, not just anger. Confusion. Fear. Hurt. And I couldn't stop thinking, I did this. My net. My trap. My mistake. So I kept coming back. The third day, I brought fish. I left them a good 20 feet away, never made eye contact, and slowly backed off. He didn't move while I was there, but when I returned the next morning, the fish were gone. A good sign. Fourth day, I sat closer. Didn't speak. Didn't even try to. I just watched him. He didn't growl that time. He didn't do anything. But his tail was still broken. I could see it more clearly now, the fin was torn beyond healing. It would never work again. He was grounded. And he knew it. When he stood up and tried to walk, it was clumsy. Unnatural. He used his wings to balance, tail dragging like dead weight behind him. I stayed very still, hands clenched in my lap. I wanted to say something. Anything. But words felt pointless. I just watched. And he just glared. By the fifth day, I started drawing. I'd bring a stick or a piece of charcoal, and I'd sketch in the dirt near where I sat pictures of dragons, of flying, of fish. At one point, I looked up and saw his head tilted, just slightly. Curious. He didn't move closer. But he didn't look away either. I felt something like hope. The sixth day, I dared to speak. Hi, I whispered, voice soft and dry. I'm not here to hurt you. Not anymore. He blinked once. I placed the fish down again. Sat a little closer. He didn't growl. He didn't leave. But he didn't come near me either. Trust takes time. I knew that. So I stayed until the sun started to dip low and the trees cast long shadows across the grass. I stood up, turned to leave. And heard him shuffle. Not toward me. But not away either. I smiled without meaning to. Shredder's POV. It's been 7 days. 7 days since I last saw his face. 7 days since the night he didn't come home. 7 days since the sky stopped feeling like mine. I've flown farther than I ever dared. Beyond the peaks, over the frozen rivers, past the cliffs where the winds scream against stone and even humans hesitate to follow. I've left scent trails, carved signs into bark, howled into the dark. Nothing. Not even his scent. The sheep barely look at me anymore. They know. I don't sleep. I barely eat. The muscles I worked for years to build feel heavy and wasted. My wings ache. My heart aches more. And still I go out. Every dawn. Every dusk. Over and over again. Toothless, where are you? The humans haven't been more active than usual. I circle above their village sometimes, high enough not to be seen. There's a boy that walks near the edge of the forest more often now, but I don't care. None of them matter. Only one thing matters. Only he matters. And I will find him. Even if I have to burn the world to do it. Chapter 12, A Memory of a Different Life. POV, Shredder Hiccup. Shredder's POV. I stood at the edge of the cliff, the sea stretching beneath me like a gaping jaw. The wind scraped past my scales. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I hadn't slept in 3. The sheep bleated behind me, uncared for, growing restless in my absence. I couldn't care less. Toothless was still missing. And now, doubt had begun to creep in, not doubt of his strength, or his spirit. But something else. A thought had started to burn in the back of my mind, slow and stubborn. A memory. But not from this life. No. From the other one. My human life. I'd almost forgotten it. It had felt like a dream for so long, distant, irrelevant. But now, the pieces came surging back like a dam had finally cracked. The movie. The scenes. The moment. How to Train Your Dragon. In the film, the Night Fury was injured. By a human. Trapped. Grounded. Hiding in a valley near a Viking village. My breath caught. Could it be? Was this all really happening? Not a coincidence, not some twist of fate, but a replay? What if Toothless had followed that same path? What if it's all repeating? Suddenly I felt stupid for not thinking of it sooner. I knew how it went. I saw it. I lived it in that other life. It was all right there. And if it really was repeating, then Toothless wasn't lost. He was hurt. Trapped. Near Burke. And that valley. I remembered it. Rocky walls, soft moss, a pool at the center. Quiet. Hidden. I stretched my wings. The pain in my joints meant nothing anymore. I was going to find him. Hiccup's POV. Training was over. Thank Thor. Astrid had knocked me into the dirt again, and Snotlout had spent most of the session crowing about how many dragons he'd kill someday. Fishlegs was the only one who didn't treat it like a blood sport, but even he didn't get it. They didn't understand. None of them did. Because they didn't know about him. Toothless. I called him that now. Seemed fitting. His teeth disappeared into his gums unless he was angry or yawning. And the name made him feel closer. Like he was more than just the Night Fury. He was my Night Fury. I snuck into the kitchens and grabbed a bucket of fish, mostly cold, a little slimy, but I'd learned what he liked. Then I ducked into the forest and followed the now familiar trail, heart pounding with each step. Every day I came back. Every day I sat a little closer. And today, something felt different. When I entered the valley, Toothless was already by the water. He looked up, his ears twitching, but he didn't rise. Didn't growl. Just watched. I slowed to a crawl, then set the bucket down about 5 feet away. Then I waited. He sniffed the air. Took a slow step forward. My breath caught. Another step. And then he paused right in front of me. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. He leaned forward, nose twitching, closer. And then. Warm. Smooth. Scaled. His nose touched my open palm. Just for a second. But it was enough. I swallowed hard, eyes burning, trying not to shake. Toothless, I whispered. You're really letting me? Then I heard it. A roar. low, deep, full of fury. Toothless stiffened immediately. His eyes went wide, his body snapping tense. I turned, heart thundering, and there, standing at the top of the cliff, silhouetted against the sky, another night fury. Bigger. Taller. Eyes glowing like two chips of burning ice. He looked down at us like a god from above. And he wasn't happy. Chapter 13, Beneath the Branches. POV, Shredder hiccup Shredder. Shredder's POV. I watched from the cliff's edge, wings half spread in the golden afternoon light. There they were. Toothless. And the boy from the village. The one I saw creeping near the forest so many times before. The one I'd almost attacked, more than once, without knowing. But now I saw everything clearly. The fish. The careful movements. The trust. The connection. And I knew I was right. I knew. This world, this life, it was the one I remembered. The movie wasn't just some old fantasy from my past life. It was a glimpse into what would happen here. This was how Toothless becomes strong. How he finds someone to fly with. How he becomes more than what I could teach him. More than a shadow in the sky. He needed this human. And this human, he wasn't the enemy. He was the start. I exhaled a slow breath, wings folding in as I stepped off the cliff. I didn't dive or roar. I glided, soft and silent, down into the valley, my paws touching the grass without a sound. Toothless turned to face me, eyes wide. I stopped a few feet away, just long enough for our gazes to meet. He didn't run. Didn't flinch. His mouth trembled, ears twitching slightly, and then he chirped. Low. Soft. Familiar. And I knew. He missed me too. Hiccups POV. I couldn't breathe. The massive night fury had landed like a shadow falling over the world. He was huge, easily twice Toothless' size, wings broader, chest heavier, horns longer. He was staring right at me, and for a moment I swore my heart stopped. I didn't know what to do. Run? Scream? Play dead? But then Toothless looked at him. Not in fear. In joy. His ears perked. His tail flicked. He let out this weird, excited chirp and turned back to me like he wanted to show me something. My throat was dry. Is he yours? I whispered. Toothless blinked. Then without hesitation he turned and ran toward me, his limp still obvious but full of energy. And before I could even think to move, he crouched low, wings flaring just enough for balance, and whoa hey! I jumped on him. Toothless didn't flinch. He just purred. Like he wanted this. Like he was saying, this is okay. I looked up. The big one was walking toward us. Slow. Calm. I tensed, unsure what was coming, but when he reached me, he simply stopped, lowered his head slightly, then turned away. He padded toward a tree, curled up beneath it with a heavy exhale, and closed his eyes. That was it. No roar. No teeth. No fire. Just peace. Toothless shifted under me and let out a soft snort, like see, I told you. I stared, still frozen. This day made no sense. But somehow, it felt right. Shredder's POV. The grass was soft beneath me. The sun filtered through the branches above. I listened to the wind and the distant sound of Toothless breathing. I didn't need to speak to be heard. Didn't need to fight to be strong. My brother was alive. He was growing. He was happy. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't afraid. My eyes drifted shut. And I slept. Chapter 14, The Name We Give. POV, Shredder Hiccup Shredder. Shredder's POV. I woke up to the soft rustling of the wind and the scent of the ocean carried on it. The sun was still low in the sky, but I could already feel the warmth against my scales. My wings stretched wide, the tension in my muscles easing from the peaceful night. Toothless was already awake, sitting near the edge of the valley, his black fur shimmering as he looked out at the horizon. He turned his head toward me, his ears flicking forward in recognition. I could tell what he was thinking. We didn't need words. There was no need to fight for dominance or even to argue. We had always been close, since the first time we met, and that bond only grew stronger with each passing day. He was my brother in every sense of the word. I pushed myself to my feet, my claws clicking lightly on the ground as I approached him. Toothless rumbled softly, a sound that was both a greeting and a comfort. There was no tension between us, just a shared understanding. I stretched my wings and flicked my tail, settling down beside him as we both watched the valley. There was no need for any grand gestures or words. It was peaceful. And that was enough. Hiccups POV. The valley was quiet, almost too quiet, but I didn't mind. I sat a little distance from the dragons, watching them both with growing curiosity. Toothless had been more relaxed since the first day I met him. And now, seeing him beside this giant night fury who was clearly his companion felt like the beginning of something much bigger. I sat on a rock, sketching in the dirt. My mind raced, but I kept my focus on the dragons. I knew I had to figure something out, name the big guy. It wasn't fair to just keep calling him Big Night Fury. I stared at him for a long while. He was a force of nature, calm yet powerful, his dark scales glinting in the light. He had a presence about him, one that made everything feel right. I knew this was the moment. Finally, I stood up, dusting off my pants. "You need a name," I said aloud. It wasn't like Toothless was going to answer, but I looked to him for some kind of sign. "How about Shredder?" Toothless blinked at me, his head tilting to the side slightly. I smiled, watching how he gave me a curious look. It was almost like he was asking me if it was okay. The bigger Night Fury, Shredder, didn't move at first. He just watched me with those piercing eyes. He didn't seem bothered by the name, but I wasn't sure if he liked it or not. Then, Toothless gave a low hum, something between a purr and a rumble, and Shredder's posture seemed to relax. It was like Toothless had just accepted it, and that was enough for him. "Well, it's settled then." I grinned. "You're Shredder." Shredder didn't make a sound. He simply flicked his tail, a quiet movement that somehow made me feel like he agreed. Shredder's POV. I watched the human Hiccup, as Toothless had named him carefully. The name didn't matter much to me, but the way Toothless reacted, the way he seemed at peace with it, told me everything I needed to know. Hiccup had no fear, no hesitation. He didn't look at me with distrust or suspicion, like so many others would have. There was no need for confrontation. There was only acceptance. And that felt right. I stretched out my wings again, and Toothless bumped his head lightly against my side. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. It reminded me, again, that he was my brother. No words were needed. We didn't need to fight to prove anything. We didn't need to speak. We simply existed, together. Chapter 15, What Fear Looks Like. POV, Hiccup Shredder Hiccup. Hiccup's POV. It had been a few days since I named the Big Night Fury Shredder, and things had been peaceful, to say the least. Toothless was already adapting to the bigger guy's presence, and I was starting to understand the bond they shared. But there was still so much I didn't know. Dragons were still a mystery to me. My Toothless wasn't exactly normal. And the big guy? Shredder? He was even more unpredictable. The problem was, I had no idea what would make them tick. What would make them scared? Angry? It was time to figure it out. I paced in front of them, holding a wooden stick, a little unsure of how this was going to go. I wasn't exactly known for my genius ideas, and I wasn't sure how they'd react to me testing out random things, but, well, here we were. "All right, Toothless," I started, stepping a little closer, "let's see how you react to this." I waved the stick in the air, holding it out in front of me like a sword. I wasn't entirely sure what I was doing, but I had seen enough dragon training to know that their reactions were key. I wanted to understand what scared them, what made them defensive. Something that could give me an edge if I needed it. Toothless blinked, his ears flicking slightly. He didn't look alarmed at all, just mildly curious. His tail twitched. He let out a soft huff, watching me carefully. I tapped the stick on the ground with a little more force, making it create a loud thunk against the dirt. Toothless immediately flinched. His wings flicked up, and his eyes widened for a split second. I grinned. Okay, I was on to something. It wasn't a huge reaction, but there was something there. I took a step back, considering my next move. I then turned to Shredder, who was lying on the ground nearby, his eyes half closed. I wasn't sure how he'd react, but I figured it was worth a try. I waved the stick in front of him the same way, tapping it lightly on the dirt, making sure it was loud enough to grab his attention. Shredder's eyes snapped open, the change in his demeanor instant. His wings flared out slightly, and he pushed himself up, standing taller. His nostrils flared as he snorted one long, low growl rumbling from deep within his chest. I froze. For a moment, I thought I'd gone too far. But then Shredder's posture softened. His wings folded in, his body lowering again as he turned his gaze back to me, steady and calm. Not scared, I realized. I glanced over at Toothless, who was still eyeing me carefully, his tail twitching. It seemed like he wasn't entirely sure whether to be cautious or just let me keep doing what I was doing. I lowered the stick and stood still for a moment, thinking about my next move. Shredder's POV. I watched Hiccup. He was trying to understand, trying to figure out what I would respond to. But I wasn't like the others. I had no interest in what humans feared, I was more concerned with what mattered. I saw Toothless flick his eyes over to me. He was trying to make sense of Hiccup's movements, too. They were a strange pair, weren't they? The boy raised the stick. His movements were slow, deliberate, but there was something about it that caught my attention. It wasn't the stick itself, it was the sound. The thunk it made on the ground. That was what made me react. I didn't flinch the way Toothless did. But I could feel something stirring in me, a primal instinct that wanted to rise to the surface. I didn't need to fight to show my strength. The sound itself, the tap, was enough to make me remember my size. To remind me of what I could do. But I didn't move. Instead, I lay back down, my wings folding in tight. It didn't matter to me what scared me. What mattered was that I was here, with my brother, with the boy. And that was all I needed. Hiccup's POV. I looked over at Shredder, thinking about how he didn't react the same way. The big Night Fury had almost no fear, he wasn't jumpy, and the stick didn't seem to faze him at all. Okay, I thought, staring at him. This is going to take more than a stick. I reached down and pulled a small pile of branches from the fire pit, making sure they were long enough to be used as a sort of spear. My hand tightened around the makeshift weapon, and I held it out toward them both, looking for some kind of response. This time, I didn't hit the ground with it, though. I simply moved it in front of me slowly, watching their eyes. Toothless stared at it for a moment, his ears flicking back in slight unease, but he didn't do anything. Shredder, on the other hand, stood up. He tilted his head, watching the stick. His muscles rippled as he shifted, almost as if he was trying to gauge my next move. I grinned. This could work. All right, I muttered to myself. Let's see what happens now. Chapter 16, The Eel. POV, Hiccup Toothless Shredder Hiccup. Hiccup's POV. I had just come back from a long day of work at the school, a bucket of fish in my hands. The sun was starting to dip below the horizon, and the sky was painted in soft shades of purple and orange. Toothless and Shredder were waiting for me by the edge of the valley, as they always did. It had become routine feeding time, training time, and whatever else we felt like doing. I had been in the middle of organizing the fish when something unusual happened. As I carried the bucket over to them, something slipped out of the side, unnoticed. It was small, wriggling, and before I knew it, it fell straight onto the ground between Toothless and Shredder. I stared at the little creature, blinking. I began, my eyes narrowing. What the heck is that? It was an eel, and it was flopping around on the ground. It must have slipped out of the bucket with the rest of the fish. I had no idea how it had gotten mixed in with the food, but there it was wriggling and trying to escape. Toothless was the first to notice it. His entire body stiffened, his ears flicking back as he took a step away from the squirming eel. His eyes locked on it, his body tense with unease. It wasn't that he was attacking it, no, Toothless wasn't that kind of dragon. But the eel's erratic movements seemed to unsettle him. I watched with mild amusement as Toothless took a few more cautious steps backward, his tail flicking nervously. I let out a small laugh. You don't like it, hey? Toothless' reaction was exactly what I'd expected. It wasn't the first time he had been cautious around something strange. But as I turned my gaze toward Shredder, I saw something a bit different. Shredder, the older and bigger Night Fury, wasn't acting scared. No, he just seemed curious, watching the eel wriggle around, his eyes narrowing as if sizing it up. I slowly approached the eel, crouching down. I wasn't sure why, but I felt a little bad for the poor thing. It wasn't its fault it had ended up in this situation. I reached down to pick it up, and as soon as I touched it, the eel made a sharp wriggling motion, startling me. Whoa! I yelped, pulling my hand back. In that moment, the eel made another attempt to escape, wiggling away from me as I reached to grab it again. Toothless flinched at the movement. His wings fluttered briefly, and he shot me a look that seemed to say, I told you this was a bad idea. His tail twitched, and he backed away even further, his eyes wide. I looked back at Shredder. He wasn't backing away, his eyes locked onto the eel as it wriggled and slithered along the ground. Toothless POV. I was not having any of this. The moment that eel flopped out of the bucket, I could tell something was wrong. It was too squirmy, too unpredictable. It wasn't like the fish I normally ate. Its movements were fast, sudden, and made me feel off. I took a step back, my wings spreading slightly. I couldn't understand what it was about this creature, but I didn't trust it. It was wriggling and twisting in all the wrong ways, and I was not about to get close to it. It wasn't the first time I had been uneasy around something like this. I had been through many strange encounters, but this eel was something new. I could feel my body stiffen with a sense of uncertainty. I glanced up at Hiccup, who was watching me with that familiar look in his eyes, the one that said he wasn't sure whether to laugh or be concerned. I wasn't sure why, but I just didn't like it. Shredder's POV. I wasn't worried about the eel. It was a small thing, nothing special. I had faced far worse in my lifetime, and I knew that the boy wasn't going to be bothered by it for long. But I couldn't help but be amused by Toothless' reaction. The younger Night Fury was always quick to react, always hesitant when confronted with the unknown. It was something I had learned to respect about him. His wariness had kept us both safe countless times. Still, it was clear to me that Toothless wasn't enjoying this. I could see the discomfort in his eyes. But I wasn't worried. I could handle anything, and I could see that the boy was ready to move on. I gave the eel another glance. It wasn't worth my time. Hiccups POV. I glanced back down at the eel and gave it one more try, carefully picking it up and holding it away from me. All right, I said, a little exasperated. That's enough of that. I looked back at Toothless, who was still keeping his distance, but I could see him calming down a little. He wasn't as agitated anymore, but I could tell he wasn't going to forget that eel anytime soon. His eyes were wide, and he was still watching it carefully, as though it might jump at him any moment. Shredder, on the other hand, didn't even seem to care anymore. I wasn't sure if it was because he was older or just more confident, but he was completely uninterested in the eel. I let out a laugh, walking over to Toothless and scratching behind his ear. "You're all right, buddy," I said, trying to calm him. "It's just an eel. I promise it won't bite." Toothless gave a quiet, disgruntled huff, but he leaned into my hand, his body relaxing just a bit. The eel, I noticed, had stopped wriggling. It had given up, probably worn out from its escape attempts. I carefully moved it back toward the stream, where it could return to its home. "See?" I said, turning back to Toothless. "Nothing to be afraid of." But as I said that, I couldn't help but laugh quietly to myself. Of course, Toothless wasn't scared of much. But this little eel? It had definitely gotten under his scales. Chapter 17, The Power of a Touch. POV, Hiccup Toothless Hiccup. Hiccups POV. It was a quiet evening, and after a long day of classes, I found myself sitting beside Toothless, just enjoying the calm. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a purple twilight sky. A gentle breeze stirred the air, and the sound of the sea below echoed in the distance. Toothless, as always, was close by, resting his head on the ground beside me. I had been absent-mindedly scratching under Toothless' head, near his chin, when I noticed something strange. Toothless' eyes, which had been watching me for a while, slowly started to droop. I paused, my hand hovering in midair, unsure of what was happening. But when I continued scratching him just under his head, his body relaxed even further, and his eyelids closed fully. "Hey, buddy," I said softly, but he didn't respond. I chuckled under my breath as Toothless' breathing became deeper and slower. The little guy had fallen asleep, and I hadn't even realized it was happening. I looked at him for a moment, smiling. It was rare that Toothless fell asleep this easily, especially when we were outside. But there he was, curled up comfortably, utterly at peace. I had always known that dragons were incredibly in tune with their surroundings, but I never quite realized how a simple gesture, like petting them in a certain spot, could have such a calming effect. Maybe there's something to this touch thing, I thought. I wonder if it works on other dragons too. I gave Toothless one last scratch before I stood up. He remained sound asleep, his tail gently twitching as he rested. I could feel a warmth in my chest as I looked at him. Toothless wasn't just my dragon, he was my best friend, my companion through thick and thin. After a moment, I sighed and turned away, heading for the school. It was time to go to class, and I had a feeling I might be able to use this new insight. Toothless POV. I had been so content. The soothing scratches from Hiccup under my chin had relaxed me to the point where I simply couldn't keep my eyes open. It was rare, but sometimes I felt so comfortable with him that I just let myself drift off to sleep. His presence had that effect on me. It felt safe, warm, and for once, I didn't have to worry about anything. My body relaxed as I fell deeper into sleep, completely unaware of the world around me. I wasn't worried about anything, nothing could harm me when Hiccup was around. Nothing at all. Hiccups POV. I walked into the classroom, my mind buzzing with the thought of how Toothless had fallen asleep. If it worked on him, maybe I could use it in class. We were supposed to be training dragons, testing their reactions, and today was no different. But what if there was more to dragon behavior than we'd ever considered? What if it wasn't all about fear or aggression, but also comfort? When I entered the room, I saw that today's lesson was going to be a bit more challenging. We were testing our skills with different types of dragons, and I was up against a Gronkle. The dragon was big and tough, with thick armor-like skin and a deep, rumbling growl that sent shivers through the floor. "All right, Hiccup," I muttered to myself. "Let's see what we've got." I had to approach this carefully. I knew the Gronkle's nature. It wasn't overly aggressive, but it was unpredictable. So, I needed to be smart. The dragon was pacing, waiting for me to make the first move. I stood at a distance, watching carefully. The other students were all observing, eager to see what I would do. I glanced down at the fish bucket in my hand. There was no eel this time, just the usual fish. But as I looked at the Gronkle, I remembered Toothless. The gentle, calming effect of the petting from earlier. Maybe, just maybe, there was something to the idea of a soft approach. I slowly lowered the bucket, not making any sudden moves. Then, as the Gronkle eyed me warily, I extended my hand not in a threatening way, but in a calm, gentle gesture, just like I had done with Toothless. The Gronkle paused, its nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. I could see the muscles in its body tense up, unsure of what I was doing. But I didn't move, just waiting. I reached out my hand even further, slowly approaching the Gronkle's head. It watched me carefully, and then, almost hesitantly, it allowed me to come closer. I held my breath. I could see the Gronkle's ears flattening slightly. It was still cautious, but my calm approach was working. I gently rubbed the top of its head, right between its eyes. The Gronkle's body relaxed under my touch, and its breathing slowed. Before long, the Gronkle had closed its eyes and let out a soft, contented rumble, settling down to the ground with a thud. The class gasped in amazement. I smiled, feeling a rush of satisfaction. I had done it. I had calmed the Gronkle with something as simple as patience and gentle touch. The instructor, Gobber, nodded in approval. "Not bad, Hiccup. I've never seen anyone calm a Gronkle like that before." I turned to him, trying to hide my pride. "It's just about understanding them, Gobber. Every dragon has their own quirks. You just need to know how to approach them." I glanced at the Gronkle, now peacefully lying down, and then I thought about Toothless back home. Maybe dragons weren't all about force or fear. Sometimes, it was about showing them that you understood their boundaries and respecting them. Chapter 18, Flight for Toothless. POV, Hiccup Toothless Hiccup. Hiccup's POV. It was a crisp morning, and the valley was quiet. The sound of the ocean below was a constant hum, and the birds in the sky were soaring effortlessly above us. I stood by the edge of the cliff, watching as Shredder took off into the air. His massive wings flapped powerfully, lifting him higher and higher with every beat. He had always been an exceptional flyer, and seeing him in the sky was a reminder of just how powerful Night Furies could be. Toothless was sitting beside me, his eyes fixed on Shredder. I could see the longing in his expression, the way his tail twitched uneasily. He had always been a bit more cautious than Shredder, but I could tell that seeing his older brother fly without him was bothering him. I put a hand on Toothless' back, scratching gently behind his ear. "Don't worry, buddy," I murmured. "You'll be back up there soon enough." Toothless turned his head to look at me, his eyes a mixture of sadness and hope. He wanted to fly. He had always wanted to soar through the skies like Shredder, to feel the wind rushing past him. But for some reason, Toothless just couldn't get off the ground. I could feel the weight of his frustration. It wasn't easy for him, and it wasn't easy for me to watch. "I'll figure something out," I said quietly. "I promise." Toothless POV. I watched Shredder soar higher and higher, his wings cutting through the air with ease. I couldn't help but feel a pang of envy deep inside me. I wanted to fly like that. I wanted to be up in the sky, feeling the wind rush past my face, the freedom of it all. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't do it. My wings weren't strong enough. My back tails still weren't working the way they should. Every time I tried, I just couldn't get off the ground. I looked up at Hiccup, his hand resting gently on my back. He smiled at me, but I could tell that he was worried. He was always worried about me. He wanted to help, and I knew that he would do whatever it took to make sure I could fly again. I trusted him. And I knew, in the depths of my heart, that somehow, he'd find a way. Hiccup's POV. I spent the entire afternoon thinking about how I could help Toothless. I knew he wanted to fly more than anything. He was so strong, so full of potential, but there was just something about his wings that was holding him back. I had to find a way to help him. So, I went back to the workshop, and that's when the idea hit me. I had built plenty of things for dragons before, but what if I could build something that would help Toothless fly again? Maybe a harness, something that would allow me to help him get airborne, at least for a while. If I could get him back in the sky, it would be a start. I grabbed a few pieces of metal, some straps, and a few other materials, and began constructing my plan. Toothless was still sitting outside, watching me work through the window, his eyes following my every move. I worked late into the night, refining the design and making sure everything was just right. But when I finished, I felt a bit of doubt. What if it didn't work? What if Toothless couldn't fly, even with my invention? I didn't have time to second-guess myself. I had to try. Toothless POV. I had been sitting by the window for what felt like hours, watching Hiccup work. He was so focused, so determined. I couldn't help but admire him. Whatever it was he was building, I could tell it was for me. He wanted me to fly again, to feel the wind beneath my wings. I felt a flicker of hope deep inside me. Maybe, just maybe, this was the answer. Hiccup's POV. The next morning, I called Toothless over. "All right, buddy, time to test this out," I said, feeling a bit of excitement mixed with nerves. I carefully attached the harness to Toothless, making sure everything was secure. The design wasn't perfect, but it was sturdy enough. I patted Toothless on the head. "Let's do this." Toothless gave me an unsure look, but I could see the trust in his eyes. He was willing to try. I climbed onto his back, adjusting the harness. "Okay, here we go," I said, taking a deep breath. "We're going to fly, just like we always dreamed." Toothless started to move, his muscles flexing as he prepared for takeoff. I could feel his body tensing, but I knew he was doing his best. He pushed off the ground, his wings flapping hard. At first, we went up a few feet, but then, to my horror, the harness buckled and we both tumbled back to the ground with a heavy thud. "Ugh, okay," I groaned, rubbing my head. That was a little too ambitious. I helped Toothless back onto his feet, trying to ignore the frustration building inside me. I had to get this right. The second attempt was no better. We tried again, but Toothless' wings couldn't get enough lift. We crashed into the grass with a soft grunt. "Come on, Toothless," I muttered. "We can do this. Let's just take it slower." Toothless looked at me, his eyes filled with uncertainty, but he trusted me enough to try again. We weren't going to give up that easily. POV, Hiccup and Toothless, together. This time, I made a few adjustments to the harness. It was time to be more careful, to pay attention to how Toothless was moving. He was strong, but he needed more support. I climbed on again, and we slowly began to rise into the air. This time, Toothless flapped his wings more cautiously, testing the lift before he put all of his energy into it. I could feel the tension in his muscles as he fought to get off the ground, but we were both more in sync now. Slowly, but steadily, we gained height. The air rushed past us as we climbed higher, and I felt my heart race. Toothless' wings were working. Slowly, but surely, he was flying again. We soared through the air, the wind whipping through my hair. Toothless let out a triumphant roar as we reached the top of the valley, the world sprawling out below us. I laughed out loud. You did it, Toothless. We did it. Toothless tilted his head back, roaring in excitement, and I couldn't help but grin. We had done it. Toothless was flying again. Chapter 19, The Return of Shredder. POV, Shredder Toothless hiccup. Shredder's POV. The sky was alive with the rush of wind as I glided through the air, my wings stretching out wide, cutting through the clouds with ease. I had been flying for a while now, relishing in the freedom of the sky, and I could feel the familiar joy coursing through me. I glanced down below, where Toothless was circling the valley, his wings flapping carefully. I could tell that his flying wasn't as smooth or natural as it should be. He still struggled a little with keeping altitude, his back tail flapping unevenly. His wings were strong, yes, but they weren't as efficient as mine. He needed more support. I made a decision. With a few powerful beats of my wings, I dove lower, coming in alongside him. I knew exactly what he needed, someone who could help him regain his balance in the air. Toothless looked at me, his eyes filled with uncertainty, but there was a quiet determination beneath that. He wasn't about to give up, not after everything we had gone through together. I could see it. But he needed the help, just like I did when I first learned to fly. I gave him a nudge, guiding him toward the ground. His wings folded against his sides, and he landed softly beside me, his eyes searching for something. I could feel his frustration. It was time to go back home. Toothless POV. Shredder had been flying so effortlessly, his wings beating in a rhythm I couldn't quite match. I could feel the difference every time I tried to keep up with him. I wanted to fly. I wanted to soar like him. But something was missing. My tail wasn't as strong, and I needed something else, someone to help me. As I hovered mid-air, I watched Shredder glide down beside me, his expression calm and knowing. I flapped my wings hard, pushing myself to gain altitude, but I was quickly falling behind. Shredder wasn't going to wait forever, and I felt myself grow more and more frustrated. But then, I remembered. Hiccup. I needed him to ride me again, like we had done before. He knew how to help me balance, how to guide me. He had always been there to support me, just like I had supported him. I let my wings slow as I followed Shredder back down to the valley. We landed gently, and I could see Hiccup approaching, a worried look on his face. It was time for me to let him help again. Hiccup's POV. I had been working in the workshop, trying to repair some of the new gadgets for the village, when I heard the familiar sound of wings cutting through the air. Looking up, I saw Shredder and Toothless gliding in from the distance. Shredder landed smoothly first, his massive form settling onto the ground as he folded his wings. Toothless followed, but I could see the hesitation in his movements. Toothless landed lightly, but his tail twitched, and his wings weren't fully extended. It was clear that flying still wasn't easy for him, not like it used to be. "Hey, buddy," I called, walking toward him with a smile. "You look like you've been working hard up there." Toothless didn't respond with his usual playful nudge, though. Instead, he turned his head toward me, his eyes filled with that familiar sadness, the one that told me he wanted to fly, but something wasn't right. "You know, you can't do it alone, right?" I asked softly, walking closer and gently placing my hand on his side. You need a little extra help right now. Toothless blinked at me, his eyes wide and searching. He knew I was right. He had always needed me to help him stay balanced when he couldn't do it himself. I pulled out a few ropes and adjustments to the harness I had been working on. With Shredder's help, Toothless was flying again, but it wasn't quite enough. I had to ride him. I had to guide him back up to where he belonged. All right, let's try this again, I said, more to myself than to Toothless. This time, we'll do it together. You and me. I mounted Toothless carefully, adjusting the reins. He looked back at me, his eyes full of that trust he had always shown me. I patted him on the back. It's gonna be okay, Toothless. We've done this before. Just follow my lead. We began to move, and for a moment, I could feel the hesitation in Toothless' wings. But then, I felt him gather strength, and before I knew it, we were rising into the air. Toothless' wings flapped rhythmically, but this time, I could feel his hesitation. He wasn't sure if he could fully fly without the extra support. I tightened my grip around him, steadying him as we ascended. His wings beat with more strength, and slowly, we started gaining altitude. Good job, buddy, I murmured. You're doing great. But just as I felt us start to soar higher, Toothless began to dip slightly. He wasn't yet fully in control of his movements. I could feel the way his wings strained to lift us higher, and it took all my focus to keep us steady in the air. I tried again, guiding him with a gentle tug of the reins, making sure to adjust my balance with his. This time, we stayed up longer, but still, there was an uncertainty in the way Toothless moved, as though he wasn't sure whether he could fully do it on his own. You can do this, Toothless, I said, trying to encourage him. Just trust me, and we'll figure it out together. And just like that, Toothless let out a low, determined growl. His wings flapped once more, stronger than before. We gained more height, and this time, it felt right. Shredder's POV. From where I was standing, watching the pair of them, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Toothless had come so far, and now, with Hiccup's help, he was flying again. I had always known that the bond between Hiccup and Toothless was strong, but watching them in the sky together, it was more than that. It was a partnership, a perfect balance. I let out a contented sigh, watching as the two of them continued to soar. I could tell that Toothless was beginning to regain his confidence. He wasn't just flying with Hiccup, he was flying with his brother, in spirit. Hiccup's POV. Finally, after what felt like hours, I managed to get Toothless flying high, soaring across the sky with me on his back. His movements became smoother, and I could feel the difference as he gained confidence. I couldn't help but laugh, exhilarated by the sensation of flying again with him. We're doing it, Toothless! I shouted over the wind, we're flying! Toothless gave a joyful roar, his tail flicking behind him. We were high above the valley now, the wind rushing past us as we soared freely. I knew you could do it! I shouted, unable to contain my excitement. We flew together for a long while, higher and higher, until we eventually made our way back to the valley. I gently guided Toothless down, both of us landing gracefully near the cave entrance. All right, let's take it easy for a bit, I said, sliding off Toothless' back and giving him a pat. You earned a rest, buddy. Toothless nuzzled me happily before settling down onto the ground. I sat down beside him, smiling as we both took a much-needed break. Chapter 20, A Sky for One. POV, Shredder. The wind rustled through my wings as I watched them. Toothless and the human Hiccup soared together through the sky like they were born to. Every flap of their ascent echoed a bond so deeply rooted it didn't need words. I could feel it from here. I didn't need to fly beside them to recognize it anymore. He was soaring now, not because of me, but because of him. Hiccup. And that was okay. I stood at the edge of a high ridge, tail slowly swaying behind me. The sky was cloudless, calm, and wide. Perfect flying weather. Toothless landed not far below, Hiccup climbing off with a satisfied grin while Toothless folded his wings and laid down, looking tired but proud. I watched from my perch. They didn't notice me. Maybe they never would. I was quiet. Still. This was it, wasn't it? What I had watched in the old life was becoming real. Toothless' journey had begun. His own story, his bond with the human, his rise as a dragon that would one day unite two worlds. And me? I was proud of him. More than words could say, not that I could speak them aloud. But I didn't belong in that tale. Not anymore. Toothless didn't need protecting. Not from me. Not anymore. A slow breath left me through my nostrils as I closed my eyes, letting the wind brush against my scales. 5 years I had raised him, protected him, trained with him, hunted with him, shared silence and sleep and skies. And now he was ready to fly his own path. I opened my eyes again, turned my gaze to the horizon. Endless blue. Distant clouds. Distant lands. I had stayed near this island near Berk for so long, waiting, watching. But there was more out there. Somewhere out beyond the edge of what I'd seen. Dragons I'd never met. Storms I hadn't flown through. Stories not yet lived. I spread my wings. They had grown strong over the years, sleek and scarred from a few fights, honed from countless hours slicing through winds and storms. Toothless was strong now, but I'd made myself stronger. Fast. Quiet. Sharp. There were dragons out there who wouldn't welcome me like he had. And that was fine. I looked down one last time. Toothless had already curled beside Hiccup near the tree, a peaceful breath rising and falling as he napped. He didn't need to know I was leaving. Not yet. I turned away from them, faced the open skies. Time to go. The air whistled around me as I took off with a powerful leap, wings snapping wide and catching the current. My muscles responded immediately, the thrill of flight rushing through me. No more circling the island. No more hiding in the cliffs. This time, I wouldn't stop. I'd follow the sea, the stars, whatever path called to me. Toothless had a partner now. A mission. A destiny. And me? I would find my own. Below me, the coastline slipped by, the wind rippled over the treetops, and I felt the world stretch out before me like it had been waiting for me to finally move. There was excitement in my chest, but also something warm. A quiet, calm thing. He was going to be okay. And now, so was I. HTTYD, what if I was Toothless' brother? Chapter 21, Shadows in the Sky. POV, Hiccup. It had been hours since I last saw him. I looked out past the cliffs, shielding my eyes against the afternoon sun. The sky stretched out endlessly beyond the edge of Berk, but there was no shadow, no ripple of black wings. No sign of the bigger night fury. Shredder. I whispered. I didn't even know his real name. But that's what Toothless had let me call him. The way Toothless had nudged my hand, almost expectant, when I'd hesitantly said it, it stuck. It fit. And now he was gone. Toothless shifted beside me, looking out over the same horizon. He let out a low croon, soft and uncertain. You know where he went? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Toothless didn't respond. He just kept staring toward the sky, where the older dragon had vanished. Maybe he was never meant to stay. Maybe he had his own journey. Still, something in me ached. Not fear exactly, he wasn't a threat. But he was a mystery, a piece of something bigger I didn't understand. And now he was gone. I reached up, resting a hand on Toothless' head. "We'll see him again," I said. "We have to." Toothless blinked slowly and nudged his head into my hand. But his eyes remained on the sky. POV, Shredder. The air above the ocean was cold and open and wild. Perfect. I flew low over the rolling sea, cutting through gusts and drafts, weaving above scattered rock spires and little waves like mirrors. My wings caught the wind with ease, honed after years of slicing through storms and cliff winds. I didn't even need to think about flying anymore, it was instinct. Breath. Life. I flew because I could. Because I needed to. And because it was time. The island I came upon was rugged, wild, with jagged cliffs and thick trees curling up its sides like claws reaching for the sky. My wings slowed, descending in cautious spirals before my feet hit the stone surface with a heavy thud. It was quiet. Too quiet. I crept forward, talons silent, tail low to the ground. The forest here was thick with fog. The air smelled of salt and moss and something else, something faint and sharp. I found a cave nestled between two rock faces, dark and hollow. I stepped inside, ducking my head slightly as my eyes adjusted. Then I heard it, a soft growl. Not deep like a challenge, but low and wary. I turned my head sharply, eyes narrowing. There, deeper inside, a dragon, a small one, hunched low. Gray-green scales, eyes wide, wings twitching. I didn't hesitate. Boom! My plasma shot illuminated the cave in a flash of blue. It struck the stone near the dragon's tail, just a warning. The dragon shrieked and bolted down a side tunnel, disappearing into the dark. I didn't follow. I didn't care enough. Instead, I exhaled, smoke curling from my nose as I curled up where the shadows were thickest. My heart had already calmed. I wasn't here to fight. Just to rest. The stone was cool beneath me. The silence wrapped around me like a second skin. My eyes closed. Sleep. Morning. The sunlight cut through the cave entrance in soft slants of gold. I stretched slowly, rolling to my feet. My wings folded and unfolded as I stepped out into the light, blinking at the brightness. Time to eat. I scouted low through the island brush until I found them burrowing lizards near the roots of thick trees, fish trapped in tide pools along the beach. I ate in silence, my mind never stopping. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. But I hadn't found it yet. Then, just before noon, I took to the skies again. The island fell away behind me as I chased the horizon. I didn't have a destination. Just a direction. That's when I saw it. An island smaller than Burke, but strange. Ringed by jagged cliffs, the center of it sunken like a broken bowl. As I flew closer, something twisted in my chest. A scent. Faint but familiar. Decay. I circled lower. There were bones. Everywhere. Strewn across the rocks, half sunk in the sand, coiled around the base of trees and spilled into the shallows. Dragon skeletons, old, twisted, cracked with age. I hovered in the air, wings wide, and narrowed my eyes. Something happened here. And whatever it wasn't long ago. I dropped lower, letting the wind carry me over the hushed remains. My chest felt tight. Not fear. Not exactly. But something was wrong here. And I intended to find out what. Chapter 22, Discovery and Warnings. POV, hiccup. You've been sneaking off every day, hiccup. Astrid's voice was sharp, accusing, like an axe being sharpened, and I flinched even before I turned to face her. She stood in the middle of the training ring, arms folded, brow raised. Her eyes were locked on me like I was some unruly dragon about to bolt. Well, she pressed. I glanced down at my boot, then up at Toothless, who was lazily flipping a rock with his snout. He looked so harmless, like this just a dragon playing with stones. But I knew what she saw, the rarest dragon in the world. A night fury. I didn't mean to keep it a secret, I said quietly, trying not to look guilty even though, well, I was. It just, kind of happened. Astrid narrowed her eyes. Kind of happened? You've been vanishing from training, sneaking off after curfew, showing up with weird burns on your gloves, and now I find that. She pointed directly at Toothless in the forest like it's no big deal. Toothless let out a chirp, almost amused. He's not dangerous, I added quickly, stepping in front of her slightly. He's different. Smart. Kind. He let me ride him. That caught her off guard. You rode it? I nodded. It's how I've been winning the exercises. Astrid's jaw tightened. She took a step closer, looking past me toward the dragon. Her tone dropped low. Does your dad know? My stomach dropped. No, I said immediately. And he can't? Not yet. No one can. Please. Toothless walked forward and stood beside me, his eyes focused on Astrid. Not threatening, just watching. I expected Astrid to yell. To turn and run. To blow the whole thing. But she didn't. She stood there, watching him for a long moment, then finally muttered, "He doesn't look like a killer." Toothless blinked. She sighed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. This doesn't make any sense. Tell me about it, I muttered, half smiling. But, if we can train them, understand them, maybe we can stop the fighting. Maybe we can change everything. Astrid didn't respond. Not right away. But she didn't tell anyone either. That was enough. POV, Shredder. The cave was dark. But not in a peaceful way. It was a hollow, jagged place near the edge of the bone island I'd landed on. The bones here were different. Bigger. Crushed. Twisted. Not just dead but obliterated. I stepped inside, cautious, tail swaying low. The air was colder here. Still. And then I heard it. A screech. It wasn't like a normal dragon cry, it didn't echo like pain or fear. It was like the world itself flinched when it hit. My body tensed, every muscle ready. My wings twitched open without thinking. That sound. That sound. My mind flooded with memories. Not mine. My old ones. My old life. A movie. An animated screeching monstrosity that burrowed through stone and spit death from beneath the earth. A beast feared by even the fiercest dragons. A monster. The screaming death. I bolted. Out of the cave, wings launching me skyward faster than I'd ever moved in my life. The trees blurred. The cliffs fell away. The bones below shrank. I climbed high, slicing through clouds, the air thinning in my lungs, but I didn't stop. Not until the island was nothing but a dot below. I hovered there, breath fast, heart pounding. My body trembled not from fear, but anticipation. If that thing was real, then this world had dangers even Toothless didn't know about yet. And if I'd heard it, it might have heard me. Chapter 23, Clash in the Shadows. POV, hiccup. The wind bit at my cheeks as Toothless soared higher above Burke. Behind me, Astrid gripped my waist, her breathing sharp with awe and maybe just a little fear. I still can't believe this, she said, almost yelling over the rushing air. You trained him? I didn't train him, I shouted back with a grin. We trust each other. That's it. Below us, the sea sparkled in the sunlight, calm and endless, but something in my chest felt uneasy. It had been a week since I'd last seen the other night fury, the larger one, with eyes like smoldering stars. Shredder. He hadn't returned. And somehow, that worried me more than I wanted to admit. POV, Shredder. My claws dug into the jagged stone near the ruined cave. The stench of death and heat lingered in the air, an unnatural mix of rot and scorched stone. It was still down there. The screaming death. The cave mouth trembled again, not from collapse, but from movement. I launched into the air just as a deafening shriek blasted from the darkness. It was so loud I felt it in my bones, a pulse of sound that shattered loose rocks and sent a murder of terrified birds scattering from the trees above. Then it burst out. The creature was enormous, twice my size. Its hide was pale, almost luminescent, and its jaw opened wider than any dragon I'd seen. Spikes lined its body like armor, and its eyes burned with wild hunger. It had sensed me. It had hunted me. I curled in midair, wings tight to my body, then spun into a dive. The screaming death followed with a roar that shook the cliffs themselves, stone cracking beneath its massive weight. I fired first. My plasma blast lit the sky, screaming toward its face. It turned at the last moment. The shot grazed its armored skull and exploded against the rocks behind it. Fire licked the sky, followed by smoke and dust. I barely had time to flip upward when its massive tail whipped forward. Crack! The air burst around me. I felt the wind ripple my wings even though the blow missed me by inches. I twisted midair, flipped again, then unleashed a pair of blasts, one low, one high. It reared back, snarling as the first one struck its underbelly. The second exploded against its flank. Still, it didn't stop. It roared, and the world shook. That scream! It wasn't just sound, it was force, pressure, pain. It slammed into me like a wall. My wings faltered. My legs kicked uselessly. I plummeted several feet before I caught myself again, body trembling. That screech was a weapon. It opened its mouth again and fired a fireball so big it glowed white hot. I dove hard and to the left, feeling the searing heat rush past me. My shoulder brushed a stone pillar, the edge slicing across my scales. I gritted my teeth, pain sharp and blinding, but I powered forward. I couldn't let it corner me. I spun once, then soared higher, circling above it like a hawk. I had the skies. That was my advantage. Another plasma blast formed in my chest. I held it this time. Not just force. Not just speed. Power. This was what I'd trained for, stronger in less time. The glow turned white-blue in my mouth. Heat radiated from my jaws, singeing the air. The cave below cracked as the heat hit it just from proximity. I released it. Boom! The explosion hit it square in the back. The screaming death howled, its screech turning feral. Chunks of stone flew in every direction. It reared, wings beating so hard the trees below bent from the pressure. It flew up to meet me. Its size shouldn't have allowed it. But it came anyway, all teeth and fury. It shot upward like a torpedo, and we clashed in midair. My claws slashed across its face. It bit at me, fangs snapping shut an inch from my tail. We spun through the sky, a cyclone of fury and flame. I latched onto its side, trying to push it downward toward the sea. If I could drag it down, drown it, maybe. It shrieked again. The sound hit me like a thunderclap. My grip loosened. It slammed its shoulder into me and sent me spiraling through the air, wings flailing, crashing through a canopy of trees below. I hit the earth hard, sliding across grass and stone, smoke in my lungs. I rolled once, twice, then came to a stop near the cliff's edge. My chest heaved. I looked up. The sky was dark with wings. The screaming death hovered there for a moment, its red eyes locked on mine. And then it dove. Chapter 24, Fire in the Sky. POV, Shredder. I saw the flash, the white blur diving down like a comet of bone and rage. I didn't think. I moved. My wings snapped open. My legs pushed against the dirt with all my strength. I launched myself to the right just as the screaming death crashed down where I'd been, pulverizing the stone and soil like paper. Chunks of earth exploded upward, raining debris as I twisted and launched myself skyward again. No brakes. No time. Move. My body screamed in protest, cuts and bruises aching, but I pushed harder, faster, until the ground was nothing but a blur below me. Boom. My plasma exploded toward him dead center, glowing hot and seething with power. It struck his armored side and sent him twisting in the air. He roared a shriek of fury and pain and retaliated. From the whirling mass of his body, white spikes fired out like missiles. I dove hard beneath them, the air hissing as they tore past me. One scraped my wingtip, burning pain flared, but I didn't stop. Couldn't. His whole body was a weapon. No legs. No arms. Just a massive, serpentine juggernaut, built to destroy. He twisted midair with unnatural speed for his size, mouth glowing, gathering fire. He's not slowing down. He's adapting. I soared in a wide arc, pulling him away from the cliffs. Over the ocean. I needed space. If he screamed again while I was close, I wouldn't survive it. Another plasma charge built in my throat. But I didn't release it yet. Wait. Wait. I flipped upward, riding the air current, tail whipping. He followed, predictable, hungry, blind with fury. Now. Boom. I spun and blasted directly into his face, point blank. He shrieked again, but this time, I was above him. High enough to avoid the full effect. The blast forced him back toward the sea, spiraling. But his wings beat hard, recovering faster than I expected. He roared, a scream of absolute rage. Spikes shot out in every direction, dozens of them, slicing through the air. I darted between them, one cutting across my side, blood welling hot. My muscles burned from every movement, every beat of my wings. He opened his mouth. The fireball this time was bigger, more wild. It glowed deep orange, almost molten. I rolled, narrowly dodging it as it exploded against a far cliff, shattering stone. We were circling now. Two monsters locked in a deadly dance in the clouds. No time. No thoughts. Just survive. I couldn't outmuscle him. Not yet. But I could outfly him. Keep him moving. Make him waste energy. Burn through it before he gets smart. I pulled higher into the sky again, looped around, and rained 3 quick plasma blasts behind me, then dove into a spin, wings pulled close, spiraling like a bullet through the air. He shrieked and gave chase, fire curling in his mouth again, tail spinning, leaving a trail of spikes in his wake. The skies of the archipelago turned black from the smoke and fury. The battle wasn't over. Not even close. Chapter 25, The Cost of Fire. POV, Shredder. The air stank of smoke and scorched salt water. My wings ached with every beat, but I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. He was still coming. The screaming death, more beast than dragon, a living natural disaster, was relentless. He crashed through the sky behind me like a hurricane given form. Each beat of his wings stirred whirlwinds. Each scream shredded through my skull like jagged glass. He's not tired. Not even close. My side burned where one of his spikes grazed me. My breaths were shallow now, muscles twitching from exertion. My plasma reserves were dwindling. I'd been pushing them, forcing blasts more powerful than I should have. I could feel the strain in my chest, the twinge of something about to tear. I can't keep this up. But I didn't back down. I spun midair and shot another blast right into his path. It burst in his face, searing white and blue. He faltered, roared, but kept coming. That should have slowed him more. I banked left, then dived low over the ocean, letting the cold spray hit my face, trying to clear the dizziness clouding my vision. He followed. Of course he followed. I twisted up, aiming to outmaneuver him, then veered right, shooting back a wide scatter of 3 quick blasts. He shrieked again. I couldn't see if they hit. I couldn't afford to look. I flapped hard, faster than before. Pushed every last bit of energy into my flight. My body screamed in protest. But I knew. This wasn't a fight I was winning. Every exchange, every dodge, was just buying time. I had power. I had speed. I had control. But he had something worse: unyielding rage. An endless engine of destruction. I hit him. I hurt him. But he didn't stop. He didn't feel it. Or if he did, it just made him angrier. And the worst part? He was learning. He adapted to my attacks, closed gaps faster, angled his body to deflect blasts. The brute force I relied on wasn't enough anymore. I rose higher into the clouds, heart pounding, breath ragged. He followed like a white shadow of death. No. Not like this. I couldn't die here. Not yet. Not when Toothless needed me. Not when I had so much more to do. I needed to be smarter. Faster. Stronger. Right now, I needed to live. I snapped into a sharp dive, feinting left, then pulled into a brutal upward twist that tore the air around me. I heard his roar, felt the heat of his fire, but I was gone before it could reach me. Leave. Now. I flew fast and far. Over the sea, over the rocks. I didn't look back. I felt his scream, echoing across the waves, but I didn't stop. Not this time. Chapter 26, Smoke and Silence. POV, Shredder. The winds were calmer now. My wings beat with heavy effort, sore and tight. The sky above was clear blue and indifferent to everything that had just happened. My body burned, but I made it. There it was, the island. The familiar rocky cliffs and the wide cave where we'd once slept, where I'd raised Toothless. Where I'd felt peace. I circled once to make sure I wasn't followed, then landed with a shaky thud, claws skidding across the stone. My legs barely held me upright. My chest ached. Not just from exhaustion. From something deeper. Toothless. I curled up inside the shadowed part of the cave, the wind howling faintly outside. My thoughts spun in slow circles. I'd lost. Not completely. But close enough to know the screaming death wasn't something I could handle alone. Not yet. I needed time. I needed strength. And I needed to be ready for whatever came next. POV, hiccup. They caught him. They caught Toothless. It still didn't feel real. I sat outside Gobber's forge, hands wrapped around my knees. My mouth was dry. My chest hurt. Not from any hit or wound. Just, from everything. The arena was supposed to be my final trial. I was supposed to kill the dragon. Win the village's approval. Become a Viking. But instead, Toothless showed up to save me. And they took him. The image wouldn't stop replaying in my head, netting wrapping around his wings, his body crashing to the ground, claws scraping stone as he tried to get free. I'd screamed his name. But it wasn't enough. Stoic had seen everything. He didn't yell. Didn't need to. The look on his face said it all. He'd taken Toothless. taken him to find the dragon's nest. And I stayed behind. Because they didn't want me. Because I didn't belong with them anymore. Because I couldn't face Toothless like this. I stared at the mountains far off in the distance, where the ships had gone. I could barely see them now. But I felt it. Something terrible was waiting there. Chapter 27, Into the Cage. POV, hiccup. The arena was dark. It was always dark in here. The cold stone walls echoed with distant dragon roars once meant to strike fear. But today, they felt wrong. Misplaced. Like ghosts of a life I no longer believed in. You've got 5 minutes before Gobber finds out we're missing, Astrid whispered beside me. Her voice was low, serious, but not unfriendly. I just need to, I murmured, pressing my weight against the rusted gate. It creaked open with a reluctant groan. Behind me, the others hesitated at the entrance. Snotlout crossed his arms. Why are we sneaking into the training cage? What are you planning, Hiccup? Fishlegs peeked nervously around the stone arch. You know this is where the dragons are kept for class, right? This isn't safe. I know exactly what it is, I said. That's the point. One by one, they followed me in. Torches flickered along the upper walls, their flames barely lighting the gloom. Below, the caged dragons shifted in their pens. Natters, nightmares, gronkles, dozens of them, each locked behind heavy metal bars. And all of them, afraid. They didn't roar when we entered. Didn't hiss. They only watched. I need you all to see something, I said, turning back to the others. I need you to see them the way they really are. Astrid stepped closer to a natter cage, her brows furrowed. Why are they so quiet? They're not monsters, I said softly. They're prisoners. Snotlout scoffed. So what? They're suddenly misunderstood. You're gonna ask us to feel sorry for them? No, I replied. I'm asking you to meet them. Just once. Without swords. Without nets. Just, see them. There was a pause. Then Fishlegs nudged forward. Which one's safe? I pointed to a nearby gronkle. That one. She's old. Calm. Doesn't bite unless you yell. He crept over, slowly kneeling in front of the bars. The gronkle opened one eye, then snorted softly. No sudden movements, I whispered. Let her smell you. Fishlegs extended his hand cautiously. The gronkle sniffed it once, twice, then gave it a big, slobbery lick. He choked. Oh my gods, she likes me. I smiled. Yet. She does. Astrid moved next. She stood still in front of the natter cage, letting it size her up. The natter paced, feathers clicking. You need to lower your stance, I said. Show her you're not a threat. Astrid slowly kneeled. The natter tilted its head, then, after a tense moment, crept forward and tapped its snout against her forehead. Her eyes widened. She's beautiful. Snotlout was next. Reluctantly. Grumbling the whole way. I swear, if this monstrous nightmare eats me, I'm haunting your skinny butt. You're not really its type, I said. He glared at me, then turned to the nightmare. It growled. He growled back. And to everyone's shock it grinned. Oh. Okay. Okay, he said, puffing up. Yeah, that's right. You recognize strength. Toughnut and Roughnut found a zippleback, of course. They climbed the bars before I could stop them, yelling at each other the whole time. You're holding the tail wrong. No, you are. Guys. I tried, but it was too late. The dragon reared up, hissed. And both twins fell backward into a pile of straw. Awesome, they said in unison. I looked around the cage slowly. Every one of them, every single one of my classmates had a dragon now. A bond forming. Something impossible just days ago, now so obvious. Dragons weren't the enemy. We just never gave them the chance. Astrid stepped over beside me, her natter already walking calmly behind her. Why did you wait this long to show us? She asked. I hesitated. Because I didn't think you'd believe me. She looked at me. Well, I do now. POV, Shredder. The skies were clearer today. I soared high, wings stretched, the ocean glimmering below. The wind whipped past my face like a song I almost remembered from a dream. But the ache was still there. Toothless. I could feel it in my chest, that absence. That silence. That missing presence I'd grown so used to. He was going on his own journey now. Learning. Growing. Becoming more than just a dragon. Becoming a rider's friend. And me? I'd tried. I'd fought. I'd bled. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. I turned mid-flight, looping into a slow curve. The wind shifted behind me, guiding me eastward. Toward the cliffs I remembered. Toward the smoky wines and wooden houses. Toward the only place that ever felt like a home in this new world. Burke. I'm coming, little brother. Chapter 28, Return and Rescue. POV, Shredder. The wind was cool above Burke. It had been days since I left. The salt still clung to my scales, and the battles I'd fought still echoed in my bones. But as the island came into view beneath the setting sun, something felt different. Quieter. But not in the fearful way. Not in the way Burke used to go silent when dragons were spotted overhead. No, this quiet was full of purpose. Anticipation. Like everyone was holding their breath. I dropped low, wings slicing the air with precision, my shadow stretching across the cliffs as I came down over the old arena. I hadn't been here in a while. Not since. I froze. There were dragons in the ring. Many of them. A natter flapped its wings, sending up gusts of dust. A gronkel rolled lazily on its back. Two heads of a zippleback bickered like children. And behind them all, humans, teenagers, kids training, laughing, riding. I narrowed my eyes. They're bonding. Just like the movie. Then I saw him hiccup standing near the edge with a small group. His face was set with determination. Not like when I first met him. This wasn't the unsure boy sneaking into the forest. This was someone with a mission. I watched him move toward Astrid, speaking fast. His arms waved animatedly, pointing toward the sea, the cliffs. She nodded. Everyone else did, too. They were preparing for something. My claws touched down quietly on the outer wall. I crept closer, careful to stay out of sight, but it was hard to miss the ripple of silence that fell when I finally stepped through. Gasps. One of the twins shouted, "That's the other Night Fury." "Is it wild?" asked Fish Legs, clutching a scroll to his chest. "No," Hiccup said, voice calm but full of emotion. "That's Shredder." I met his gaze. He didn't look scared. He looked relieved. He walked toward me, past the others, past their hesitant steps. He didn't run. He didn't reach out right away. He just stood there, nodding. "I knew you'd come back." I tilted my head, watching him. Then glanced at the dragons around him. They were all bonded. All new. It clicked together like puzzle pieces. "You found riders for them," I thought to myself. "You're not training them for fun. You're preparing for something." He confirmed it without words. I need your help, he said, stepping closer. Toothless is trapped. My whole body tensed. Trapped? Hiccup glanced back at the others. The others know too. We didn't have dragons before, so I couldn't go after him. But now we do. They're all ready. And you're here. He looked up at me with a small smile. We're going to get him back. I blinked slowly. The wind tugged at my wings, but I didn't move. Just processed. He didn't abandon him. He planned this. I stared at him a moment longer, then lowered my head, bowing slightly. He stepped forward, hesitating for only a moment before resting a hand against my snout. Thanks, he murmured. Behind us, the others were climbing onto their dragons. Astrid on her natter. Fish legs on the gronkel. The twins still fighting over who controlled which head. Snotlout, flexing unnecessarily, as always. I opened my wings wide and crouched low. Are you serious? Hiccup asked. You're letting me ride again. I gave a slow blink. He climbed up, more confident than before, settling between my shoulders. I launched into the sky, wind roaring past, and behind us the rest of the group followed, dragons and riders lifting into the air, silhouetted against the dying sun. We soared higher, cutting through clouds, heading toward the cliffs beyond Berk. And I thought to myself, we're coming, Toothless. Hold on. Chapter 29, Fire and Weight. POV, Stoic the Vast. The sky burned with smoke. Cannonballs laced with fire roared through the air, crashing into the cliffs with a fury only men who'd lost too much could summon. Each impact echoed through Stoic's bones, shaking the very stones of the nest they'd found. His men reloaded quickly, silent, focused, relentless. The warships rocked on the tide as the waves slapped their hulls, but no one faltered. Not with Stoic at the helm. Again, he bellowed. Another volley launched. Flaming iron soared in a wide arc before vanishing into the smoking chasm ahead. Then, whoosh! A dragon burst from the entrance, screeching as its wings caught fire mid-air. Then another. Then a dozen. A torrent of dragons came pouring out of the mountain like a dam had burst, terrified, disoriented, frantic. Hold your fire! Stoic shouted, raising a fist. The barrage stopped. The smoke swirled, masking everything. I don't see the queen. Gobber called beside him, half shouting over the chaos. Stoic's eyes narrowed. She's in there. I feel it. He gripped the rail of the ship tighter. If he had to walk into the mountain himself, he would. But deep in his gut, something twisted. The dragons were fleeing. Not attacking. Not defending. Fleeing. Why, he muttered under his breath. Before he could dwell on it, a shadow passed overhead, massive wings blotting out the sun for a moment. A monstrous nightmare, scorched and howling, flew overhead and vanished into the sky. Something's wrong, he growled. POV, Hiccup. He didn't care how fast they were flying, he needed them to fly faster. His fingers curled tightly into Shredder's scales, the rush of wind in his face doing little to cool the adrenaline boiling in his chest. Behind him, his friends shouted excitedly, riding their new dragons in formation. Snotlout hooped like a madman every time Hook Fang dove. Astrid kept her focus, staying on Hiccup's right flank like an anchor. Even the twins were managing not to crash. But Hiccup's eyes stayed forward. Fixed. On the cliff where Toothless was trapped. We're coming, Bud, he whispered under his breath. He didn't know how much time he had. He didn't know what Berk was doing. He only knew that this was the moment that would change everything. Shredder flew steady, powerful, cutting the air like a dagger. Hiccup glanced at him, and for a moment, he swore the older Night Fury understood exactly what was at stake. He didn't need to say anything. He just knew. Hiccup had prepared the others. They were bonded. They trusted their dragons. They were ready. And most importantly, he was ready. For Toothless. For everything that came after. Chapter 30, Dive into Fire. POV, Stoic the Vast. The cliff shattered like a broken tooth, and from its burning jaw, the Red Death emerged. The men froze. Even hardened warriors with a lifetime of dragon raids behind them, they just stood there, staring. This wasn't a dragon, it was something else. A beast of myth made real. It spread its wings like thunderclouds, red-veined and stretching so far they seemed to scrape the sea. Then it roared. The sound was pure war. My heart skipped, and I had to shout to override the fear crawling up my spine. Cannons! Fire at will! Too slow! Fwuma ship burst into fire. Another scream, another ship shattered beneath claw and flame. We tried to hold position, but the Red Death was a storm. One we weren't prepared for. And amidst it all, Dad! I turned. Hiccup! Running full speed. Toothless, he's trapped, he's trapped. POV, Hiccup. I didn't feel the heat. Or the smoke. Just the ropes. Rope after rope after rope. Come on, come on. My hands were raw, fingers shaking. Toothless was whimpering, trying to lift his wings, but they were still caught, bound too tight. I've got you, I've got you. Another rope snapped, and Toothless surged but too far, too fast. No. The net buckled. Toothless tipped over the ledge. I lunged, missed his tail by inches. He hit the water. No. I looked over the cliffside. Bubbles. Ripples. He was sinking. His wings, still tangled. He couldn't swim like this. Dad, Dad, please. I turned. Stoic stood just feet away, mouth open, staring. Please, he's going to drown, he's my friend. Stoic looked at me. For the first time in my life, I saw him hesitate. Then he tossed his hammer aside, ripped off his shoulder plate, and jumped. POV, Shredder. I saw it from the sky. The Red Death loomed behind me, and still, my eyes were drawn to the ocean because I'd seen Hiccup throw himself toward that edge. I saw Toothless go down. But then... Splash! The chieftain Stoic plunged in. For one terrifying moment, I couldn't see anything. Then a shape burst from the waves, Stoic, holding onto Toothless with one arm, swimming with the other. The sea boiled behind them as another fireball slammed into the water, sending a geyser skyward. I dived down, flying as low as possible, blasting at the Red Death's face to distract it. Anything to buy time. POV, Hiccup. Stoic pulled himself ashore, gasping, arms shaking. Toothless coughed, sputtered, and opened his eyes. I was already there, falling to my knees beside him. Hey, bud. You're okay. You're okay. Toothless weakly nuzzled my chest. Stoic was silent for a moment. Then, quietly, he saved you. I nodded, too choked up to speak. Stoic looked at Toothless again. Then at me. And I saw something shift in his eyes. He wasn't looking at a monster anymore. Chapter 31, Fury in the Clouds. POV, Shredder. I felt it before I saw it. That humming pressure in the air, fast wings, faster than even the wind, and then the shift of light through the smoke, like stars slicing through the storm. Toothless. I saw him, gliding in close wings tucked tight to dive between flame and falling stone, and Hiccup was on his back, just like I remembered. Just like I knew he would be. He looked at me. I nodded. He nodded back. Nothing needed to be said. I twisted in the air and surged upward, my wings cutting through the smoke, rising past the tips of broken ships and the great shadow of the Red Death. Toothless followed. Together, we broke the clouds. Up here, the world was quiet. The storm clouds swallowed sound. Up here, the Red Death's size didn't matter. Up here, he couldn't see. Couldn't chase. Couldn't control the battlefield. This was our domain. We circled once. Then again. The clouds wrapped around us like armor, mist clinging to my scales. Every heartbeat echoed like thunder. He was down there, beneath the clouds, searching, confused. Good. Time to show him what night furies really are. I dove first, pure instinct. Plasma built in my throat, bright and hot and thrumming. I locked onto his massive skull, the spot between his frills where the bone was thinner, weaker. FOOM. My shot landed, lighting up the darkness below. The Red Death howled. And from the side, bam, Toothless shot too, precise and sharp. His blast nailed the wing joint. I arced left. Toothless arced right. We disappeared again into the clouds. The Red Death roared, swinging his head wildly, flames pouring into the air, but he was too slow. Too big. Too clumsy. We were ghosts. I could feel the heat from his fire licking through the mist, but he couldn't track us. Again, we shot down. Again, we vanished. Blasts rained from above and vanished before he could find where they came from. He turned left, we were already right. He rose only to get slammed from below. It was working. I glanced at Toothless as we passed. He was locked in, eyes sharp, wings tight. I saw hiccup on his back, leaned forward, focused, trusting. And I felt something tighten in my chest. Pride. He's not a baby anymore. And neither was I. We rose higher again, fast and sharp, twisting through the cloud banks like twin shadows. My wings were stronger now, faster than ever. My plasma shots hit harder, hotter. I'd trained for years just for this. I'd trained to be the protector Toothless needed. And now, side by side, we were unstoppable. The Red Death bellowed again, wounded, wild. I could see black smoke pouring from one wing. His chest was scorched and cracked. One of his teeth had snapped clean off. But he wasn't done yet. He flapped his wings hard, rising higher, trying to breach the cloud line. His tail swung like a wrecking ball, blasting through a spire of stone and tossing airships like toys. He was coming to us. No. I dove again fast. This time, I aimed for his eyes. I shot. The blast hit just left, blinding one side. He screamed, wild and panicked, shaking his head. Toothless came in from the right, shooting once, then again. Both of us vanished just before he could retaliate. He screamed, deafening and furious. Then a massive gout of flame burst upward, forcing us both to pull back sharply. The fire licked the sky. The air shimmered with heat. But we stayed in the clouds. Circling. Waiting. Wearing him down. I could feel him tiring. Even giants get tired when they swing at ghosts. Chapter 32, The Final Strike. POV, Shredder. We'd been circling for what felt like hours, though it could only have been minutes. The clouds were thinning now, burned away by his flame, ripped by the wind. I could see flashes of the sea below, broken ships drifting like splinters in the water. The sky stank of smoke and blood and ozone. He was bleeding. Chunks of his wings were missing. His scales were scorched black. His breathing came in ragged bursts, puffing smoke like a dying volcano. But he was still flying. Still rising. I twisted upward, flanking his blind side. Toothless came around the other way, slower, more careful with Hiccup riding. I could feel the rhythm between them now smoother than before. Not perfect, not yet. But close. The Red Death roared again, frustrated and flailing. He knew he was losing. We just had to finish it. I dove again, shooting another plasma blast, right into the joint of his left wing. He screamed, his body tilting dangerously. He's falling. Not yet. Hiccup, now. POV, Hiccup. Toothless dive. The wind screamed past my ears as we shot downward. Same spot, bud. One more hit. Toothless growled beneath me, powerful wings tucking in as we dropped. The Red Death skull loomed ahead, massive and scarred and smoking. I could see Shredder just a shadow in the clouds circling wide. Distracting. Protecting. It was up to us now. Toothless now. He opened his jaw. Boom. The blast landed square on the skull, lighting up the sky. The Red Death shrieked, fire erupting from his mouth in blind rage. But his wings faltered. We zipped past his horns so close I could feel the heat. I pulled Toothless back up, spinning, regaining altitude. But we weren't done. POV, Shredder. The shot hit true. I could see the crack now running down the Red Death skull like a fault line. I dove again, everything I had building in my chest. Fire. Fury. Power. All of it burning bright. This was for Toothless. This was for me. This was for every second I'd trained in silence. I am Shredder. I opened my jaws, plasma glowing like lightning inside me, and fired. Crack. The blast slammed into the skull right as Toothless shot again, perfect harmony, twin strikes in the same spot. The Red Death reeled. I pulled up. So did Toothless. And then... crack. The sound was like thunder. The skull split. The Red Death wobbled, roared, flapped wildly. Then fell. I watched it twist as it dropped, wings tangled, fire sputtering, screams fading into the wind. Down, down, until it slammed into the sea with a sound that echoed for miles. The sea boiled. Then silence. Real silence. I hovered in place, wings outstretched, the clouds clearing around me. Toothless came up beside me. Hiccup was grinning wide, soaked with sweat and smoke. We looked at each other. I didn't nod. He didn't either. We didn't need to. We'd won. Chapter 33, The Silence After Thunder. POV, Shredder. The sea had swallowed the beast. Nothing remained but steam rising from the water, blackened debris drifting like ash, and the faint thrum of fire dying out. I hovered in the air, wings aching, chest still trembling from the last blast. My lungs burned from the effort, and my muscles twitched with the kind of pain that meant I'd pushed too far. But I wasn't ready to land. Not yet. Below me, Toothless glided slowly, circling above the wreckage, Hiccup lying low against his back. I could hear the wind whistle past their ears, see the way Toothless' tail still lagged just slightly behind in movement. He was tired. They both were. And yet... they were still flying. We all were. I banked toward them, dipping my wing just slightly so I could slide into formation on their right. Toothless looked up, his eyes catching mine for a second. We didn't speak. We never had to. But this time the silence felt full. I drifted a little closer and touched the tip of my wing to his. He blinked, then leaned into the gesture, letting it linger. You did good, I thought. We both did. I couldn't help the slight flicker of a memory watching How to Train Your Dragon in a Different Life, cheering for the climax, not realizing I'd one day live it. But no movie had captured the exhaustion, the burn in your limbs, the smell of scorched wind and blood. No film had ever shown the trembling satisfaction in a heartbeat that still beat, even after the impossible. POV, hiccup. Beneath me, Toothless was struggling to keep the rhythm, but he still flew. His flight was steadier than before, his balance more precise with the new tail fin. He was perfect. "You okay, bud?" I whispered, brushing his neck lightly. He growled low, a kind of tired hum, and I smiled. Then I looked to our left at the massive shadow gliding beside us. Shredder. That dragon still scared me in some ways. Bigger than Toothless. Faster. Stronger. And the way he fought, it was like he'd done it 1,000 times before. But when I saw him look at Toothless, I didn't see fire or rage. I saw something like pride. And that made me feel like everything might actually be okay. We began gliding back toward Burke. Down below, ships, what was left of them, were turning, heading home. I could see people gathering on deck, shouting and pointing at us as we came into view. Dragons flew overhead, some wounded, some flying low and slow, all heading in the same direction. Home. POV, Shredder. As Burke came into view, I felt something loosen in my chest. The town looked smaller than I remembered. More fragile. But warmer, too. People waited along the cliffs, pointing at the dragons soaring above them, faces lit with awe. Fear, yes, but something else too. Something shifting. I followed Toothless and Hiccup as they dropped down toward the main square. The moment their feet touched earth, the crowd erupted. Cheers. Shouts. Gasps. People running toward them, surrounding them in waves. I landed a bit farther off on the cliff above. I didn't want to be part of the noise. Not yet. I needed to breathe. This isn't over, I thought. There's more to come. But for now. I curled my wings around me, letting the sun warm my scales. Watching from above as Toothless nuzzled Hiccup's shoulder, as Stoic stepped forward to wrap his son in a bear hug, as villagers approached dragons not with weapons but with wonder. For the first time since I woke up in that cave, I felt like we'd changed something. Chapter 34, The Silence Before the Storm. POV, Shredder. 3 years had passed. 3 years since the Red Death fell. Since the island burned and was reborn in Dragon Fire and Trust. Since I watched Hiccup walk into the heart of a war and rewrite the story I already knew. I sat at the edge of the same cliff I used to perch on when all this began, wings folded tightly to my sides. Below me, Burke pulsed with life. Dragons flew through the sky like they owned it, now soaring, weaving, diving between wooden homes and rocky spires. Smoke curled from chimneys. Riders shouted commands. A natter nudged a barrel, and a child chased after it with a giggle. The air no longer smelled like fear. Toothless was sleeping in the sun, his tail twitching as he dreamed. Hiccup leaned against his side with a half-finished drawing in his lap, lost in his sketches again. They'd gotten stronger together. And I'd watched it all from a distance, always proud, always quiet. But something in my chest had started to ache. A whisper that had grown louder each day. "You're ready." I flexed my claws into the stone beneath me. The memory of that roar, deep and jagged like a mountain crumbling, still echoed in the back of my skull. The way the air had gone still, the ground trembling under my feet. The screaming death had nearly ended me. Nearly. I wasn't that same dragon anymore. I stood, letting the wind sweep over my face, and opened my wings. It was time. I leapt. The sky welcomed me like an old friend. Cold. Crisp. Open. The wind screamed around my ears as I broke through clouds, arcing wide over the ocean. Burke became a blur in the distance, lost behind fog and time. I didn't look back. Hours passed. The sea turned black and silver beneath me. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon. I followed the pull in my chest, the memory of that place, the stench of death, the shape of bones in the sand. It was late afternoon when I saw it again. The island. Dark and jagged, its rocks curved like claws tearing through the sea. I knew it too well. I slowed, wings catching the wind as I circled the mouth of the cave. Still. Too still. No movement. But I could feel it. Deep inside. That hum in my blood. That pressure in my skull. He's still here. I landed at the edge of the cavern, claws skidding across the stone. The entrance yawned open in front of me, like a mouth ready to swallow anything stupid enough to step in. I stepped in. The darkness swallowed me quickly. But this time I wasn't afraid. I could smell it before I saw it. The rot. The fire. The heat of old power still lingering in the cracks of the walls. My eyes adjusted slowly. I passed bones. Skeletons. Charred stone. A broken column of rock where I remembered nearly being impaled 3 years ago. Then I stopped. And I waited. Come on, I thought. You've been hiding long enough. Silence. Then. A rumble. Low. Like the earth grinding its teeth. A hiss, wet and heavy. I took one slow breath in. Then let it out in a roar. My wings flared wide. My lungs swelled. And I fired. The blast that ripped from my throat wasn't just strong, it was everything I had. Compressed rage. Growth. Pain. Years of watching, waiting, training. It screamed through the cave like thunder, white hot, cracking the stone and lighting the walls in violet fire. The ground shook beneath my feet. Dust poured from the ceiling. I didn't stop. I launched another blast, then another, shaking the earth until the cave roared back at me. Then. He moved. I heard it. That shriek, high and furious and ancient. The screaming death. My heart slowed. My wings lifted. My claws tightened on the stone. The monster had awakened. And I had come back for him. Chapter 35, Dance of Shadows. POV, Shredder. The cave trembled as the echo of my blast died away, and for a moment, everything was still. The darkness around me was thick, like the world was holding its breath. Then the roar. It wasn't the same as before. This one was lower, guttural, a sound that seemed to rattle the very bones of the earth. My spine tingled, the air thick with the power of the beast below. I spread my wings slightly, keeping my claws planted firm in the stone. Every instinct screamed to dive straight in and end it. But I remembered the first time. The screaming death was no ordinary beast. And he would never be slain easily. Slowly, a shape began to materialize out of the dark, hulking and massive. The walls vibrated with each step, the floor shaking as something powerful moved toward me. I could barely make it out, just a shadow, something colossal. The screaming death. It screeched again, closer, and I felt the sound crack deep into my skull. I forced myself to steady my breath, keeping my focus sharp. He couldn't see me, not yet. I moved quietly, staying to the shadows, testing the air. My heart beat faster. I could hear the creature's claws scraping across the stone, dragging, his low growl vibrating through the earth. He knew I was here. He was waiting. I darted into another crevice in the cave, hoping the dark would conceal me. But even here, I could feel his presence, an overwhelming weight in the air, like a predator sniffing the wind for the scent of its prey. I crept forward, feeling the ground beneath my paws shift with every movement. I didn't dare to rush. I couldn't afford to make the same mistake twice. POV, hiccup. I couldn't stop pacing. It'd been days since Shredder left, and I hadn't heard a word from him. I had a feeling I didn't know how, I didn't know why, but something in the pit of my stomach told me he was in trouble. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that we hadn't truly finished with the screaming death. The thought of him alone, somewhere out there, it made me feel sick. I glanced at Toothless, who was lying in the sun near the docks, tail twitching. He seemed peaceful. I couldn't say the same for myself. I stared at the horizon, the sun dipping lower into the ocean, casting long shadows across the cliffs. He's going to be fine, right? I muttered to no one, knowing that Toothless couldn't answer. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. POV, Shredder. I heard the growl before I saw it. The ground quaked beneath my claws, and then, just like that, I was face to face with him. The screaming death. Massive. Monstrous. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness, glowing faintly like coals, and its mouth curled back to reveal rows of jagged teeth. Its wings were vast, beating in slow, heavy strokes that shook the air. I could see its body, scarred and battle-worn, its tail flicking from side to side in the shadows, but the creature wasn't moving toward me. It was watching. Waiting. I tensed, every muscle screaming for action. But I held my ground, watching, analyzing. The screaming death hissed again, the sound vibrating in my bones. Then, before I could react, it charged. I had barely enough time to dart left, the creature's claws scraping across the stone, narrowly missing me. I rolled forward, my tail barely grazing the ground as I twisted in midair to gain altitude. I could hear the sound of its wings, the roar of the wind as it followed me. This is it. I shot into the sky, the beast hot on my heels. The ground blurred beneath me as I ascended, the screaming death not far behind. I could feel the weight of its gaze, the heaviness of its power pushing against me. I had to outlast it. It dove, jaws snapping shut just inches from my tail. I swerved to the side, but the speed and force of the screaming death sent a gust of air that nearly knocked me out of the sky. My wings strained against the wind as I pushed myself upward, higher, trying to get enough distance between us. The beast followed, never giving up. We spiraled, rising and falling, weaving between the jagged rocks and sharp cliffs of the cave. I shot a quick blast of plasma, but the screaming death avoided it easily, twisting midair with frightening agility for such a massive creature. Then, without warning, it shot a line of deadly spikes from its body. I ducked, barely missing them, my heart racing. The spikes embedded in the rocks behind me with a sickening crack. It's getting smarter, I thought. I darted left again, pushing myself to the limit, but the screaming death was relentless, snapping its jaws and roaring as it chased after me. The cave was too narrow for a battle like this. I needed to get out. I needed to get to open air. My wings beat harder, the cold bite of the wind stinging my scales as I turned for the exit. The screaming death was right behind me, its wings creating a deafening windstorm as it followed. I shot a blast behind me, and the creature screeched as it avoided the explosion of energy. I didn't have time to look back, only to push forward, hoping I could get to the sky before it pinned me down again. POV, hiccup. I paced again. I'd waited long enough. I grabbed Toothless' saddle and started toward the cliffs, my heart pounding in my chest. Come on, Toothless, we've got to find him. Toothless raised his head, his eyes softening. He knew. He was ready. We flew off together, cutting through the sky. I felt the wind rushing past my face, felt the familiar weight of Toothless' body beneath me as we soared higher. Shredder, hold on. I'm coming. Chapter 36, Clash of Titans. POV, Shredder. I could feel the heat before I even saw the blast coming. The screaming death let out a guttural scream and launched a surge of fireballs from its gaping maw, the force of the attack barreling toward me with terrifying speed. I darted to the side, narrowly avoiding the explosion that shook the air and sent debris scattering. But the force of the blast grazed my wing, and I felt the sting of it as I pushed onward. I gritted my teeth, determined not to let this creature get the better of me. There was no time for hesitation. It was now or never. The screaming death screeched again, its huge wings beating with the power of a storm as it closed in on me. I could feel its rage, its hunger for destruction. It didn't care that I was a night fury like it. It only cared about one thing: destroying everything in its path. I shot up into the air, trying to stay just out of reach, but the screaming death followed with frightening precision. Its tail lashed out, and I barely dodged it as it slashed through the air like a whip. The wind created by its movements threatened to send me tumbling, but I held steady, pushing myself higher, weaving between the cliffs to lose my pursuer. Then, without warning, the creature was upon me again. Its massive jaws snapped shut just inches from my tail. I was so close to being caught, but I forced myself to maneuver, twisting out of the way and spiraling upward. The air was thin, the wind howling as we ascended higher into the sky. The screaming death screeches echoed in the distance, but I kept moving, knowing that the higher we went, the less likely it would be able to fight back. Its size and weight made it slower in thinner air. It came again, more vicious this time. The beast's claws reached out, but I was faster. I twisted away and shot a plasma blast at its face, hoping to disorient it. The explosion hit the side of its head, and the screaming death reeled back, its roar of pain filling the air. But that didn't stop it. The creature retaliated by launching a series of spikes from its body. They were sharp as daggers, and I had only moments to react. I veered left, narrowly avoiding the spikes as they embedded in the rock walls around me, shattering the stone on impact. My heart raced, and I could feel the intensity of the battle building. Then, I did something I hadn't done before. I turned. I met the screaming death head-on. The two of us collided with a violent force, my claws scraping against its thick scales as I tried to push it back. It screeched and slashed at me with its powerful tail, but I held my ground, teeth bared, my muscles straining with the effort. I shot another plasma blast, aiming for its chest this time. It hit, and the beast reeled again, but it was still coming at me. I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep this up. But then, something changed. I saw it a flash in the sky. Toothless. POV, hiccup. I saw it before I even heard it. The thunderous roar of battle. The sky crackled with tension as I and Toothless soared higher, desperate to reach Shredder before it was too late. The screaming death's shrieks echoed in the distance, and I knew we were getting closer. Toothless flew faster, his wings cutting through the air with powerful strokes. I leaned forward, urging him on. Come on, boy. Just a little further. The wind rushed around us as we pushed on, the tension in the air thick with the promise of a battle. I didn't know what I was going to find when we got there. But I wasn't about to let Shredder fight this thing alone. He needed help. We broke through the clouds and saw them Shredder, locked in an intense struggle with the screaming death. I could barely process what I was seeing. The sheer size and power of the creature were unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. It was a battle of titans. Shredder, the night fury I knew so well, struggling against the massive force of the screaming death. I saw the sparks of plasma blasts flashing in the air, the creature's brutal counterattacks, and the way Shredder moved with precision and grace, dodging each blow while still striking back with ferocity. Hold on, Shredder! I shouted, my heart pounding in my chest. We're coming! I tapped Toothless' side, urging him faster. My heart raced with anticipation. The fight was far from over, and I wasn't going to let my friend face this alone. POV, Shredder. I felt the blast hit me before I even saw it. I had barely managed to dodge the screaming death's tail when a fireball shot from its mouth, sending me spiraling backward. I had no choice but to tuck my wings in and take the hit, the explosion slamming into my side, sending pain coursing through my body. But before I could recover, I saw a shadow, a familiar shape flying toward me. Toothless. I knew that voice anywhere. Toothless and Hiccup. They were here. The screaming death roared in fury, its massive form blocking the sunlight as it lashed out again. But now, we were a team. It didn't matter how big the beast was, it didn't matter how strong or relentless it was. We were going to stop it together. I shot upward, away from the screaming death's jaws, pulling Toothless along with me. The two of us moved in sync, flying in tight formations to avoid the beast's claws and tail. We shot plasma blasts from both sides, creating an onslaught of attacks. It was the perfect combination: fast, unpredictable, and devastating. The screaming death twisted in the air, its wings flapping furiously to regain control. It was faster than I had expected, but we had the advantage. Together, we could outmaneuver it. I shot another blast, and this time, I hit the screaming death square in the face. The creature screeched, the blast shaking its massive skull, but it didn't falter. It fought back with everything it had. I flew higher, circling around the beast, my wings aching but determined. I wouldn't let it win. Not today. We had come too far for this fight to end like this. And then, just when I thought the screaming death was ready to strike back with its most powerful attack, something unexpected happened. It hesitated. Chapter 37, The Final Push. POV, Shredder. The air was thick with tension. I could feel it in my bones. The screaming death was slowing down. But this wasn't a time to be complacent. It had been relentless, furious, and its size made it a challenge like no other dragon I had ever faced. But now, the creature was faltering. Its wings were struggling to keep up, its massive body beginning to lose control in the thinning air. For a moment, I wondered if it had underestimated us, if it hadn't realized that we were not backing down, no matter how many times it attacked. I turned to Toothless, who was right there beside me, gliding through the sky like a true companion. His wings were strong, his eyes locked on the screaming death with a focused intensity. It was as though we were two night furies with a single purpose. Together, we darted to the left, avoiding another wave of spikes the screaming death shot from its body. It was a devastating attack, but it was growing weaker. The beast was showing signs of exhaustion, its moves slower, more predictable. Now or never. I banked hard to the right, throwing myself into a spiral dive. I could hear Toothless right behind me, matching every movement, every twist. We had practiced this together, we were unstoppable. The screaming death's massive jaws snapped shut, aiming directly at us. But it was too late. We were already far ahead, and it couldn't keep up. My wings beat the air with every ounce of power I had left as I shot a plasma blast straight at the screaming death's head. It hit with a force that made the beast recoil, but it didn't fall. Not yet. Toothless, following my lead, shot his own blast, and the creature let out a roar of pain as the blast hit its side. But the screaming death wasn't finished. It countered by launching a volley of fireballs, aiming directly at us. I twisted in midair, just narrowly avoiding one of the fireballs that exploded near my tail. The heat from the blast stung my scales, but I didn't stop. I pushed forward, adrenaline surging through my veins. Toothless and I stayed in sync, moving like a single entity, fast, fluid, unstoppable. And then it happened. I saw the opening. The screaming death had exposed its underbelly as it attempted to turn toward us. Its wings flared out, and I knew we had one shot at ending this. We had to strike now. Toothless and I banked hard to the left, positioning ourselves perfectly. I glanced over at him, and we shared a brief moment of understanding. We had this. In a flash, I shot forward, unleashing a powerful blast directly into the screaming death's underbelly. The blast tore through the thick hide of the beast, sending shockwaves through the air. The screaming death screeched in pain, its wings beating furiously as it tried to recover. But it was too late. The beast had taken its final blow. POV, hiccup. I watched in awe as Shredder and Toothless worked together, their movements so perfectly synchronized that it was like they had done this 1,000 times before. The screaming death, despite its size and power, was no match for the combined strength of the two Night Furies. It was incredible to witness. I didn't think I had ever seen anything like it before. Shredder, this huge, powerful Night Fury, was moving with a grace and skill that rivaled Toothless. And now, together, they were bringing down a creature that had terrorized these skies for far too long. Toothless roared as his blast hit the screaming death's side. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I realized that we were winning. We were going to make it out of this alive. But the screaming death was still fighting, its roar echoing through the sky, the massive wings flapping wildly. I could see the strain in the beast's movements, but it wasn't going down without a fight. Shredder and Toothless kept up the pressure, firing blasts from every angle, each one hitting with precision. I couldn't help but feel a little proud of them. They had become such a strong team, and I had a front row seat to their victory. And then, just when it seemed like the screaming death had finally lost, Shredder shot one final blast, the energy crackling as it ripped through the air. The beast screamed in pain before falling into a spiral, its wings giving out as it plummeted toward the ocean below. I breathed a sigh of relief. It was finally over. POV, Shredder. The screaming death fell to the ocean with a deafening splash, its massive form disappearing beneath the waves. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, the kind of silence that comes after an epic battle. The adrenaline started to fade, and I felt the weight of exhaustion settle in. I hovered in the air, trying to regain my bearings. My wings ached, and my muscles were sore from the relentless fight. But I felt a sense of accomplishment. The screaming death was no longer a threat, and the skies were safe once again. Toothless flew up beside me, his wings beating steadily as he circled around me. I glanced at him, and he let out a happy growl, as if to say, "We did it." I nodded, grateful for the partnership we shared. We had done this together, and we had come out victorious. I turned toward the shore, knowing that Hiccup and the others would be waiting for us. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, knowing that the battle was over, and we had won. But I also knew that this wouldn't be the last adventure. There would be more to come. I flew back to the island, Toothless at my side, ready to reunite with Hiccup and the others.